Seeking fair lady. No matter how much she fussed with her blonde locks, Lady Charity Farnsworth cast a blue, deviled countenance before her boudoir mirror, so could not achieve a desirable outcome. She finally relinquished the brush, tossing it to the makeup-strewn vanity as she thought to herself, "Whatever am I to do? My father has forbidden me to ever entertain my beau, Sir Riley, in any genteel ton company henceforth. He doesn't understand the depths of our love for one another. What is the point of attending yet another tea or ball in pretense of making a match, when in my heart of hearts the perfect match already exists? There is none other I would ever want to be yoked to. Why can't Father forgive our innocent indiscretions in the garden and offer Sir Fenwick another opportunity to win his graces? So what if he saw us kissing? Giving up, she flung her arms out wide, then buried her face in her hands as she sobbed. Presently, a cautious knock sounded at the door. "Oh, Charity, dear," came the voice of her father. "Let me in to see how you look. You'll be meeting some exciting, eligible bachelors tonight. You must be ready. It is time to be going." "Oh, one moment, please. Be right there." She slipped a silky robe over her shift and opened the door. "Charity, where is your maid? You are not near ready to go, and your face is a disgrace. Whatever is wrong with you?" She couldn't help herself. She encircled his neck with her forearms and cried on the shoulder of his wool spencer, smearing it with rouge. "Please, Father, I have no desire to meet any other man. I only yearn for my true love." "Do you mean that insufferable rogue, Fenwick? He treated you like an adventuress. No respect for you or myself. I will not be bamboozled by the likes of him. You deserve a man of honor, the kind that will be at the gala tonight. Now get into your gown. As long as you are under my roof, you'll abide by my rules. I'll pick out a suitable mate for you, one that will be an advantageous coupling. End of discussion." He disentangled himself from her and slammed the door shut on his way out. 1 second later, the door opened again as he stuck his head in. "Don't bother getting dressed now. We would be late. I'll simply bring home some lucky fellow with me. You'll meet him when I get back, and we will have a ceremony this weekend to make you his wife. That'll put an end to your nonsense." Once he left, Charity wailed louder than ever. "No, no, no. He can't do this to me." She collapsed on the bed in tears. Meanwhile, out in the garden, Sir Riley crouched behind a leafy rhododendron, watching for the carriage to leave. It surprised him to see Lord Farnsworth was alone. That meant chances were good that Charity would be alone inside as well. He had ridden along with his partner, Sir Carlton Winslow, when he came to escort Dowager Countess Diana Honeyfield, Charity's aunt, out to dinner. His hope had been to follow Charity and her father to whatever event they had planned for the evening and try to win an audience with the Lord, to apologize for his behavior at their last meeting. This turn of events was even better. Dare he approach his fair maiden to pick up where they left off? He had gained great strides in having his way with the lass before her father had discovered their secret rendezvous in the dark garden and forbade them to see each other ever again. It was a risky plan, but with aplomb, perhaps fortune would smile on them, and her father could never deny them, given the right circumstance. His heart was pounding. If he could just get inside and convince the fair maiden to let him come inside also. His hands sweated as he hoisted himself up the giant oak that spread branches out toward what he was sure was her dressing room window. Twigs snapped and leaves rustled. Hopefully, no servants were close enough to hear his clumsy ascent. When in position, he could peer through the gauzy curtains and see her sprawled on the bed, wearing little other than a flimsy robe. His excitement heightened. He threw twigs to ping on the glass and cautiously called out her name. What was that noise? I miss Riley so much. It is as if I can hear him calling to me. She stretched up from the mattress, allowing the robe to fall away, exposing more tender flesh. Then she realized where the noise was coming from and ran to the window. She couldn't get it opened fast enough when she saw her love clinging to the branches. Soon he was within her grasp, and they clung to each other. Mouths searched and found one another. Fingers fumbled at clothing till it fell away. Palms grabbed and caressed and repeated and explored uncharted territory. He picked up her trembling body and carried it to the bed, gently placing it as he wordlessly asked permission to envelope her. She willingly granted access and likewise enveloped all of him. They brought each other to tottering heights, crashing deliciously down, and climbed again and again, becoming one with each other. Let no man put asunder, losing all sense of time and space. They belonged to each other. They were in total bliss until Charity, it is your father. I have someone you need to meet. He will soon be your husband. I am giving him your hand in marriage. Come out at once. Charity wilted in Riley's arms. You mustn't be caught in here. He'll kill you. Then he'll kill me, slowly. I know the kind of man he would choose for me. Nothing like you. Climb out, please, she whispered. I'll not give you to another man. I'll face those barking irons if I must, but you belong fully to me now. We've been caught red-handed, but we've done nothing wrong. No apologies anymore. I'll make you an honest woman. We'll visit the Amen curler tomorrow. We love each other. Your father has to see that now. No swell will have you after tonight. I'm not sorry. He kissed her quickly and slid out the window just as her father opened the door on her nakedness beneath the sheets. 1600, November 28, 2024. Subterfuge. Suitors precariously climbing trees and pressing their suit. Ripped bodices. Hot kisses. Near discovery. I nearly swooned. What more could possibly befall our hero and heroine? Be still, my heart, and wait impatiently for the next installment of All's Fair. 1640, Nov 28, 2024. So glad you approve. Thought about changing ending to where she climbs out with him and they disappear too? Haven't entered it, so think it is okay to change. Happy Thanksgiving. Reply. Edit. Delete. Upvote. Downvote. 1 point. Trudy Jass, 1656. Novo 28, 2024. Happy Thanksgiving to you. You could have her slip out before she meets what's his name, or in the day or two before the wedding. Auntie could have a little tea party for her, and off the Jersey or Gretna Green they go. Reply. Report. Upvote. Downvote. 1 point. Mary Bendixson, 2055. Nov 28, 2024. Right on. Reply. Edit. Delete. 36. Nov 28, 2024. Your story has a lot going for it. It's dramatic, emotional, and packed with tension, all of which make for an engaging Regency romance. Charity's despair and her father's overbearing nature are written in a way that makes the stakes feel real. It's clear how much is on the line for her, and that emotional pull keeps the reader invested. I love how you've woven in Regency-era details like Spencer, Ton, and Amen Curler. Those touches make the world feel authentic as without being overwhelming. Charity and Riley's relationship feels passio. Reply. Report. 1644. Novi 28, 2024. So appreciative of your comments. Was considering changing the ending to her climbing out with him to the unknown. What do you think? Happy Thanksgiving. Reply. Edit. Delete. Upvote. Downvote. 1 point. Rebecca Lewis, 1808. Nov 29, 2024. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. I think having Charity climb out with Riley could be a powerful ending. It adds an extra layer of defiance and agency to her character. It would show she's willing to take control of her own fate instead of being trapped by her father's demands. Plus, it leaves the story on a romantic and adventurous note, with the two of them facing an uncertain future together. That kind of ending would feel satisfying and true to the passion you've established between them. If you decide to go that route, you might want reply, report. Thanks again. I wrote another too cute episode last night that sort of fits one of this week's prompts. After reading the new prompts, I think I will pull the fair story and match it with a new prompt. Even though it has several likes, which I will lose, I didn't enter it into contest, so it should be okay to do. Have more family events today, but hope to get this done. Reply, edit, delete, upvote, downvote, 1 point. Leslie Mamala, 1105, Nov 28, 2024. Well done. I am ready to hear what happens next. Reply, report, upvote, downvote, 1 point. Mary Bendixson, 1653, Nov 28, 2024. Glad you liked it, and thanks for the follow. Have you read the previous episodes, all with fair in them, that lead up to this fiasco? We'll get back to your work after today. Happy Thanksgiving. Reply, edit, delete, 2020, Nov 28, 2024. Not yet, but I will. Happy Thanksgiving. Reply, report, upvote, downvote, 1 point. Thomas Wetzel, so 749, Nov 28, 2024. Your writing is so sophisticated, I can barely understand half of it. I just know it's awesome. You are so good. I'm gonna go watch every episode of Downton Abbey, and then come back to reread this and see if I can actually appreciate it like an intelligent adult. Happy Turkey Day. Reply, report, 1649, Novi 28, 2024. Gobble, gobble to you too. I don't know about sophisticated. I am only winging it on this ton stream, but glad you like it. Reply, edit, delete, upvote, downvote, 1 point. Lady Coretta, Stephenberg, 0502, Nov 28, 2024. Always a good read. Reply, report, Joe 533, Nov 28, 2024. Thank you. Reply, edit, delete, upvote, downvote, 1 point. Alexis Araneta, 1748, Nov 27, 2024. An adorable continuation of your series. Lovely work. Reply, report, 1931, Novi 27, 2024. Thank you. Do you think of this as the finale, or does it go on? Reply, edit, delete, in-flight, meal. Leo was not a fan of flying. Not like this. Sitting quietly with strangers in an enclosed space, like he was back in the classroom. That was one of his ideas of hell. He had many ideas of hell, and very few of heaven. He made sure her was one of the first passengers on the plane. He took his seat with no fuss and no nonsense, and then did his best to weather the storm of humanity around him. He tried the breathing technique his therapist had taught him, and he also tried zoning out. Neither worked. A voice in his head was screaming at him to leave. Anything was better than this. Screw the deal. Just get off the plane and go home. Maybe Jimmy was right. They should buy the Vibe Bar, change its name to something far cooler, and live the simple life. Leo's Bar. Thoughts of the bar helped calm him for a little while, but then he realized that his ambition was taking the concept to places that were far from simple. Leo sighed. Jimmy would make that bar work. He really would. But then Leo would come along, interfere, and fuck it up. And the worst of it was that Jimmy would smile sweetly and let him ruin everything. Sometimes Leo wondered whether he wasn't wired right, that maybe he'd been dropped on his head as a baby, or his mother had had a secret drug habit. Leo was never settled or content. Nothing was ever good enough. Or if it seemed like it was, it soon turned into the brown stuff and stunk to high heaven, meaning Leo had to move onto pastures new before the shit stuck to him, and he was the one stinking the place up. Somehow, he lost himself somewhere in his thoughts and self-absorption, thankful of the respite. Barely taking in the safety briefing, he came to himself as the plane accelerated down the runway, and he was pressed down into his seat as they traveled skyward. He enjoyed this bit, but it also terrified him. There was nothing natural about being propelled into the sky. He tried not to consider the landing. It was the landing that could kill you. Hit the ground hard enough, and it was all over. He blew out a breath and closed his eyes. He kept them closed as he mulled the deal. This was the big time. Once he'd done this deal, he'd be a different animal, and the Vibe Bar would be far beneath him. He was a player now. Things were on the change, and people better take note. They would have to take note. He'd make sure of it. Drink, sir? The question fazed him, but he quickly returned to himself, ordering a bourbon, then making it a double. As he poured his drink into the crappy plastic cup, he tuned into the interaction between the air hostess and the passenger sat next to him. The voice was what caught his attention. There was no mistaking the owner of that voice. If Leo were to turn and gawp at the woman next to him, he knew that he would find her attractive. Maybe too attractive. Leo's measure of too attractive was not misogynistic. He applied the same rule to man and beast alike. Beautiful people could be really up themselves and manage to be a pain in the ass at the same time. Leo had experienced this and had no time for it. Mostly, he had no time for it. There was always room for exceptions, and she turned out to be yet another of the exceptions. "Hey," he said, as he turned to greet her. "I'm Leo." She smiled and nodded. "I'm Grace." "Nice name," he told her. And for once, He thought he might mean it. There followed a silence that could have been awkward, but instead was filled with anticipation, or at least was as far as Leo was concerned. "I don't usually," he began, but trailed off as both the words and the sentiment felt off kilter. "I bet that's what you say to all the girls you sit next to on a plane," she said, with a hint of humor in her voice. That voice, there was something cathartic about it. Not only that, her very presence was doing something to him. Some things. He was regressing. A young boy around the babysitter. A pretender to a throne he never thought he would ever sit on. His body was fizzing, and his brain was spinning, so that he couldn't think straight. "So, Leo," she said, "what is it that you do?" That last word was heavy with meaning, but he could not discern it. "I'm a businessman," he replied. "The problem with the dog-eat-dog world of business is you have to piss a few people to get anywhere. Am I right?" She was smiling. He nodded. "Seems impossible not to. Trick is not to piss the wrong people off," she said in a quieter tone. Leo paused for a moment, his face a question. It were almost as though she knew something that he didn't. But how could she? She was just a stranger on a plane, and this was small talk to pass the time as they lingered in the limbo of this uncomfortable travel. Then she casually placed her hand on his thigh, and everything took a sharp right turn. "I find flying so dull." Now she was barely whispering. "Don't you?" "Not so much so now," Leo replied. Grace grinned at him. There was something overtly sexy about that grin. It sent a thrill up Leo's spine. The sensation was heightened as Grace's hand stroked higher up his thigh, and he found himself wanting more, wanting so much more. "Your business?" she asked, her voice stroking the back of his neck in time with her hand on his thigh. "Is it dangerous?" "Very." His own voice felt thick and stilted. He was inexplicably drowsy, but his senses felt heightened. Her touch was electrifying him. "I walk on the wild side." He wasn't sure why he'd told her that. Wild side? They weren't even his own worlds. "I knew it!" she said excitedly, her hand going all the way up his inner thigh and resting exactly where he had hoped it might. "You're a very naughty man, aren't you?" Naughty? Was he? If anyone else had asked him this question, he'd have put them in their place. But with her, it was different. It was like she was royalty, a bona fide princess, the sort you couldn't refuse. And he wasn't going to refuse her when she was working magic on him with that hand of hers. Couldn't react badly with where her hand was right now. "I have been known to be naughty." He struggled to say the words as an involuntary gasp threatened to intermingle with them. "In that case, I think you better ask for a blanket." Grace gave him a playful squeeze. She was leaning in towards Leo now. He felt her breath on his earlobe and neck, "Sure," he said, and duly obliged. "That's better," purred Grace as she spread the blanket over Leo. The armrest was up and out of the way now. "This business of yours, it's criminal, isn't it?" "Can be," Leo replied, as Grace moved closer to him and nuzzled his neck, sending waves of pleasure through him. The anticipation was building, and he was reeling from this turn of events. He was no longer enduring a painful flight. He was enjoying a mile-high tryst. "Oh, look, you're bleeding." Her words took too long to sink in. He responded instead to her hand, leaving him and taking his wrist instead. There was a smear of blood, but he hadn't noticed any pain or act that could have caused the slight wound. "Here, let me." He watched as she lapped at the bloodied skin on his wrist. However slow he'd been with what she'd been saying, his body responded quickly and fully to this. She was sending waves of pleasure through him, and his imagination was going to the best of places, even before she began kissing and then sucking at his flesh. He'd never known pleasure like it, never realized how sensitive his wrists were. They sat like that for a while, Grace lapping and kissing him as he looked on, Leo doing his best to stifle his moans and hold himself back. The way he was responding to her, it was like his first time, but he had decades of experience to bring to the party. Something so simple as kissing his wrist. Who knew? And if she could have this effect on him as she did this, what further pleasures awaited? He was disappointed when she stopped, resisting the urge to ask her not to cease, putting a hold on begging her for more. Instead, he went for small talk to disguise his blatant need for her. "What do you do, Grace?" he asked, as she slipped her arm around him and drew closer to him. Her hand was wrapped around him now. It felt so good. He barely registered her having undone his belt and trousers, losing his touch, drowning out the dissenting thoughts, going with it. He'd seen plenty of action before today, but not like this, not with a woman like Grace. And she was doing things to him that he didn't know were possible. He wanted her more than any woman he'd ever met, wanted to give himself over to the pleasure he knew she could so readily bestow. Her voice, her presence, it had spoken of this, drawn him in. Now she was fulfilling the promise that was made as soon as they'd taken their seats on this flight. A chance encounter that was blowing his mind to pieces as she stroked him and pleasured him. She answered his question with that voice of hers. "I deal with the naughty boys. I eliminate risks," she breathed into his ear. "And you've been a very naughty boy. Fran Johnstone is not happy with you going behind his back with this deal of yours?" His eyes widened in shock, but he barely had time to let the words sink in before her teeth sank into his neck. His back arched, and he wanted to protest, to struggle, but it was already too late for that. Too late for Leo. Grace took her time and enjoyed her in-flight well. These business trips were very lucrative for an assassin with her skills and proclivities, less so for loose cannons like Leo. Cornflower blues. It always came at night. That night was no different in that respect. I had heard it lumbering around outside as the sun disappeared from the sky, the sound of scraping metal as it circled the house. I had always fought the urge to look directly at it, instead only catching glimpses of it in the shadows. If I focused, I could shuffle it to the back of my mind like a deck of cards. But those lonely hours, when night approached and my mind was no longer engaged by work or meaningless check-ins with the few friends I managed to keep, were the hardest. At first, the check-ins came daily, then weekly, then monthly, then whenever they had a free second to pity me via text. "Hey girl, you doing okay? Do you need anything?" I don't think any of them would have known what to do had I answered yes. I couldn't blame them though. Life goes on, for some people at least. But anyway, the difference in this particular night was that I had decided to allow my mind to go to that place. No shuffling this time. Instead, accepting the cards that were dealt. Sometime after my 5th or 6th glass of Pinot Noir, I turned my phone off, placed it on the end table next to a stack of unpaid bills, pushed the dirty clothes to one end of the couch, and sank into the other end. Alone. It had been 12 months to the day since I lost my sweet boy with the cornflower blue eyes. Cornflower Connie, as I called him. Parents should never have to bury their children. Todd was completely shattered. He left me this past June. I had dropped to a rail-thin 99 pounds, and he said he couldn't stand to see me hurt any longer. I tried everything: counseling, group, rehabilitation programs, but everyone grieves differently. I guess Todd had to grieve alone. At some point, I nodded off, waking only to an unsettling silence, quickly realizing the noise was gone. I wiped the drool from my chin, licked my cracked lips, and decided to check it out. With my body bladed to the window, I pulled the curtain to the side and saw it standing under the dim porch light. The back of my neck tingled, and my heart thumped in my chest, acting like my body's panic alarm. I would normally just do a quick look. Instead, for the first time, I stayed. I studied it. Its skin was the color of burnt charcoal, and its back curved like a question mark. It shifted under the light, revealing a Grinch-like face that scrunched even more as it smiled at me, like a mischievous feline. But there, above the unnerving grin, I saw them, those familiar eyes. My cornflower Connie had come home. All I had to do was focus on those eyes. Don't you want to be with me again, Mommy? Let me in, and you can hold me again, just like you used to. What was I supposed to do? Of course, I wanted to be with him again. It would surely be better than telling myself that the random white blob in the sky actually resembled a heart. A message from my Connie. I love you too. Yeah, you can convince yourself of almost anything if you believe it enough, and if you're sad enough, just like the cardinal that occasionally lands on my fence. Good morning, Connie. Thanks for the visit. I let him in. His long, rubbery fingers took me by the arm, led me upstairs, never breaking his gaze. Where are we going? I asked, barely a whisper, in what seemed like the first words I had spoken in days. To my room, Mommy. The door creaked open, and the lights came on, bringing the room back to life. I have no idea if I flipped the switch or not. It felt like I had floated up the staircase. The room was just as he left it. COONRD, colorfully stenciled on the blue wall above his big boy twin bed. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle sheets and comforter still ruffled from that night, a little over a year ago, when he stumbled into our room just before midnight. Mommy, my chest feels weird, he moaned. After a 104.1 fever, we rushed him to the hospital. My cornflower Connie would never come home again. His fingers rolled up my sleeve and led me to the bed. I pressed his Michelangelo stuffed animal to my face, inhaling deeply, hoping it still held Connie's scent. It didn't. The tears fell, and his grip tightened on my arm, leading me into the bed. He never let go of my arm. Lay with me, Mommy. I climbed in, pulled the covers to my stomach, and rested my head on Connie's pillow. I miss you so much, baby, I yelled through tears, pounding my one free fist on the mattress. I'm here if you keep looking in my eyes. Just then, his eyes flickered, and it, as if I was watching a projection screen. I watched as we took in the afternoon show of the new Spider-Man movie last year. Connie's lap littered with buttery popcorn that missed his mouth, his icy stained lips framing his checkered smile. A flicker, a summer afternoon drive around the neighborhood, blasting random 90s songs. He loved the songs that I grew up on. We would do our absolute worst to sing along. Keep looking at my eyes, Mommy. Just a little bit more, until you can hold me again. His grip tightened some more. Another flicker, a lazy Sunday. Me sprawled out on the couch, my Connie's little body slowly rising and falling with my breathing as he naps on my chest. Another second, and I'm yours again. How could I say no? I did what he asked. just a little longer. The avalanche of warmth I felt was euphoric, as if my insides were swaddled in a heated blanket. It was the first semblance of comfort and peace that I hadn't felt since he was actually here with me. I did what he asked. Then I waited. That was 2 days ago, and I don't see my cornflower Connie anywhere. The comfort I had felt the other day dissipated in an instant. I've been patiently waiting, but now I wonder, did it lie? It's so dark here, master of puppets. Io sono il padrone, e tu sei il burattino. I am the master, and you are the puppet. Working in an antique store was hardly where Aislinn saw herself 5 years ago. But beggars couldn't be choosers in this economy. Her dreams of becoming someone had been crushed by the reality of life and the collapse of her support system after college, and she depended on this job to make ends meet. Still, something was charming about the Raven's wares, even if she did encounter some characters from time to time. Her cousin often asked her if she had ever felt spirits or weird energy working around the real skulls, the old Victorian dolls, or the taxidermy of the raven that gave the store its name. Like everyone in the town, Aislinn had heard horror stories about the objects sold from this place. A man bought a doll for his daughter, and they all vanished without a trace a week later. A woman bought a pretty ring and died in a freak accident with the ring on her finger. Someone bought an old statue and fell down their stairs. The truth was, Aislinn didn't believe in those sorts of things. Ghosts, ghouls, or energies. Sure, the place was creepy if you worked late alone on long winter nights, but it paid the bills. Those horror stories were coincidences. Plenty of people had purchased items from the Raven's wrath without an issue. Her cousin believed in that side of things so strongly. People whispered about her behind their hands. If Aislinn started believing, what would they say about their family? It was bad enough she worked here. The customers you never heard about were outsiders. A tiny voice in her head would whisper when she had this argument with herself. You've never followed up to check on what happened afterwards. She looked up from her phone when Eli barged their way back through the piles of antique junk piled around the place. A guy dropped off this painting today. I'm telling you, it's weird. Aislinn knew that everything here was weird in one form or another. She once had someone try to offer a jar of real human teeth. That had been on her second day, and regrettably, it had not been her last strange experience. They jerked their thumb over their shoulder. It's out the back by the rocking horse. I need you to label it up before you leave tonight. Did he give any details? Nah, I'm surprised you didn't see him. Dark-haired guy, glasses, had some sort of accent. She vaguely recalled someone coming in of that description when she'd been restocking some old hardbacks and had directed him towards Eli at the back of the store. She wouldn't have thought of him again. save for the odd look in his dark eyes. I sent him to the back to see you. He had this look in his eyes, like he'd seen things, you know? I offered him a fair price, but he didn't even want the money. He just said to take it. He didn't want money? Aislinn repeated slowly. That's a bit weird, don't you think? Maybe it came with bad memories or something. Eli shrugged. Just make sure to get it cataloged to go out on display. I've got to head off. I'll see you tomorrow. The afternoon was quickly fading, the air becoming colder and far less welcoming inside. The eyes of the raven on the desk seemed to watch her every move, and the gentle ticking of the antique clocks suddenly felt ominous. Even the shadows of the shelves seemed to be lengthening, reaching out in her direction. Aislinn looked up from her book and paused. The store had fallen eerily silent. She felt her heartbeat increase as the hair at the back of her neck stood up. Hello? Why was she calling out? There was no one there. No one had entered the shop. The bell above the door had been silent for hours. A faint whisper seemed to be coming from the distance. Someone must have left the radio on in the storage room. She walked to the back of the store, trying to ignore the feeling that the eyes of the dolls were watching her. It wasn't like her to be this paranoid. She pushed the door open wide and reached in to grab the portable radio the manager insisted on keeping around. Her hand found the handle and lifted it out. It was switched off. Okay, she muttered, feeling a cold trickle of sweat run down her back. She set the radio down on an empty stool and worked away around the mountains of antiques to find the latest addition to the collection. Aislinn pulled the sheet off slowly and recoiled. The painting was of a hanging puppet, clearly based on the original Pinocchio story. It's dressed in traditional clothes against a gruesome backdrop of bones and the occasional skull. The entire thing was bordered by a swirling wine-red, blood red. A shudder ran down her spine as she took in all the gruesome details. The glass on the front was cracked, but that was hardly anything they couldn't fix. There was something odd about the break, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. She turned the painting over to check the back of the frame and noticed a faded name on the back, too illegible to read, and an unmistakable bloody handprint. What the hell? The painting clattered to the floor as she reeled back, banging into a cabinet and screaming as the puppet hanging there swung into her face. Its painted smile seemed twisted into a cruel leer as she swatted it away, clutching at her chest. She took some calming breaths. She picked the painting up from the floor with shaking hands and turned it over, aware of her heart racing in her chest. There's no bloody handprint, only the faded marks of a name. You're going mad, she muttered to herself. You need to get out more. She carried the painting to the desk and started cataloging it, intrigued by the lack of an artist's mark. Even a quick Google search yielded no results, and after a few minutes, she brought it back to sit at the back by the dolls and puppets. She took a moment longer to stare at it and turned back to the front. There was a rocking horse in the middle of the aisle. No, that wasn't possible. She hadn't moved anything. Hello? She called out nervously. This isn't funny now. Come out. When no one answered, she tried to focus. Maybe it had been there before, and she had simply walked past it, not noticing. Eli had said the painting was out the back by the rocking horse. For a moment, her cousin's voice echoed in her ear, though she tried to deny it. This was not the first time something like this had happened on her shift. Eli had laughed it off with her at the time, but she hadn't seen a bloody handprint last time. Eli had moved the horse. That's all there was to it. Aislinn walked back to the front of the store and stared out at the street. Across at the ordinary sight of the small local shop and the dress shop beside it. Maybe she needed a holiday. The radio started playing a Cure song. Had she turned it on? When had she brought it to the front? Suddenly, the dark shop seemed alien to her. No, now she was being stupid. She didn't believe in any of that stuff. A sudden tiredness overcame her as she sat back in her chair and started to doze, watching the cuckoo bird on the antique clock swing backwards and forwards, swinging. She could hear the distant creaking sound of a rope and sobbing cries, growing louder and louder. Oh, how painful, how painful. Why wasn't I good? Something was hovering in the corner of her vision. Every instinct in her body screamed at her not to turn and look, to run away from that shadow. She turned her head and saw the puppet from the painting. It raised its head and leered at her. Puppets have no soul, but they do a lot of harm. Suddenly, she was the one battling with the rope as the puppet laughed and screeched over and over. I want to be real. I want to be real. I want to be real. Aislinn leapt up from her sleep, feeling the phantom rope around her throat. Every item in the shop was facing her. They seemed to be looming towards her, skulls echoing the cries of the horrific voice as it cried out over and over. Whatever sick joke this was, she wasn't playing anymore. She ran to the door and tried to haul it open. It was locked. The room seemed to darken, and the sound of the puppet's voice, distant at first, became unmistakable, growing clearer with each passing second. Its whispers now unmistakably directed at her. Oh, che male. She picked up a metal poker and walked to where the painting sat. The voice was louder now, its desperate cries in both English and Italian piercing her ears. What the hell are you? The voices paused. You should let me out. You're just like me. You're a puppet too. Aislinn lifted the metal poker above her head. What? Are you? You should let me out, Aislinn. She tried to move away, but her back smacked into a large cabinet. What the hell are you? My last puppet didn't obey. He brought me here. Un burattino che non obbedisce finisce sempre male. A puppet who does not obey always ends badly. You should let me out. I've always been here, waiting for someone to let me out. She realized then what was wrong with the glass. Someone, something, was trying to break free from the inside. Her own reflection in the glass warped into a puppet's face, and she felt the weight of something choking her. No, she was not a puppet. She was a human. This wasn't real. I am the master of puppets. Puppets have no soul, but they do a lot of harm. I tried to take his soul, but he broke free. You will let me out. You are my puppet now. You saw it in the glass. You're like me. Iceland watched in horror as the cracks in the glass grew wider. It will end badly for you if you do not obey. She lifted the poker to swing it, and the hands of the puppets on display reached out and grabbed her throat, pulling her backwards. A bad puppet is of no use to me. I have been waiting for you. There's nothing to be done. One must really die good. Iceland screamed, trying to throw the puppets off. She twisted in their grip, seeing the cracks grow wider and wider. When you're not real, nothing hurts, Iceland. But the more I try to be real, the more I feel pain. Oh, the pain. How painful this is. Can't you feel it? The creaking of the rope was unbearable. The spiraling voice wailing and wailing as she begged for this to stop, for her to wake up, to let this nightmare end. Iceland woke in her chair. The clock read the same time as it had before, but something was different. Everything was different. At some point, the gentle light of the afternoon had faded into a gray gloom bordering on darkness. This day seemed to be lasting an eternity. It was all a nightmare, a terrible nightmare. She saw it then. Her vision narrowed, and her chest tightened as she stared at it. The painting, mocking her from the back, as it always had. Maybe this was still a nightmare taken new form. Those horrible skulls leering at her, that noise, that endless noise. She approached it slowly and ran her hands over the cracks in the glass, feeling her skin crawl with revulsion. The glass was cold, unnaturally cold, like it was sucking the little warmth she had left from her fingers. I want to be real, Aislinn. A voice whispered in her ear, you should let me out. I have waited so long. She grabbed the poker from where it lay on the ground and lifted it, bringing it down to strike the glass. A gloved hand reached out of the frame and snatched hold of her wrist, forcing her to drop the poker in shock. A puppet has no soul, but it can do harm. It cackled, drawing her closer to the frame. You're my puppet now. Your soul is mine. No! She screamed, grabbing at the nearest object, a porcelain bird, and throwing it at the puppet. You aren't real. None of this is real. She felt the world begin to blur and tried to pull away from its grip. But it was too late. This couldn't be it. This couldn't be how this ended for her. This wasn't fair. This wasn't fair. You aren't real, she cried as her mind began to break. You aren't real. She felt the rancid breath of the puppet as it whispered in her ear, and now neither are you. The quiet before. I bent low over the painting, the tip of my brush dotting at the corner of the landscape. It was just a tree, after all. But the spot of varnish that had welled up and discolored over the years needed to be removed. When the acetone leached into the surface, it peeled back, and my heart clenched. As the varnish removed a layer of paint, it revealed a subtle, dark patch of pigment beneath its surface. I sat back, a chill running through me. Underpainting. Maybe a hidden painting? I held my breath and stripped off my rubber gloves as I leaned back from the canvas. The visible image was a simple landscape, rolling hills and a few meandering roads, the colors muted by age and dust. The sky was a washed-out blue, and the trees on the horizon seemed too far off to be of much importance. It was nothing special, but that was never the point. What mattered now was finding out what lay beneath. I put on fresh gloves and lifted the painting with care. The canvas felt heavier than it should have, and I walked slowly over to the imaging lab. I positioned it carefully on the table, making sure that it was level, before placing the X-ray scanner above the canvas. The machine hummed to life, and I stepped back to the desk as the images slowly appeared on the screen. Beneath the visible landscape, buried under layers of thick, muddled paint, was a face. It was likely a woman, as I could see brush strokes of long hair curling around her face beneath the layers. The image was ghostly, faint, and slightly blurred, but unmistakable. A portrait. The faint outline of her features, her eyes staring somewhere just beyond the frame, sent a shiver through me. She was there, just beneath the surface. I didn't need to look at the X-ray again. I'd seen enough. I grabbed my phone and quickly searched for the artist's name. It was barely anything, just some obscure mentions in art journals, but something about it felt wrong. There had to be more. I spent the next few days buried in the archives. The museum had extensive access to resources on all sorts of artists, but the painting's creator remained elusive. There was nothing concrete about him, just scraps of details on a man who seemed as obscure in life as he was in death. The painting, this painting, felt like a living thing, pulling me deeper into its mystery, one layer at a time. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how much there was to discover. As I attempted to track down her creator, I peeled back the landscape layer by layer, revealing the portrait of a strange, haunting woman. Her pale face was framed by dark flowing hair that reached her shoulders. Her gaze was distinct, distant, yet her features soft, as though she's looking at something or someone beyond my reach. There was a haunting grace, a quiet calm to her, but an unsettling depth in her eyes. The light in the portrait was soft and diffused, casting a faint glow on her skin and creating gentle shadows under her cheekbones, giving her face an almost ethereal quality. She sat as though she is regal, with a slender curve to her neck, though her pose was rigid and upright. Her gown looked heavy and richly textured, and almost blurred into the darker background. I found myself losing time, focus, and all sense of responsibility to this woman. Time had started to slip away in ways I couldn't explain. Days melted into one another, the world around me a blur as I spent more time with her. But no matter how much I uncovered, there was always a feeling that I was just scratching the surface. I pulled the stack of archived files towards me and sighed, taking another sip of the peach energy drink I'd come to rely on during these long stints of hunting down the elusive painter of the hidden woman. I'd discovered his name was Luigi Diovina. But beyond that, there were mere snippets of his life. An article about his madness toward the end of his life, and a lost last painting commissioned for a baroness. That article had sent a shiver up my spine. Could this be that painting? If so, I'd found a hidden treasure, but the baroness remained unnamed, leaving me with no way to verify who she was. I leaned back in the chair, my eyes falling once more on the image of the woman. I hadn't been able to stop thinking about her. I wasn't the only one noticing the strain. Clara, Jenna, a senior restorer, pulled me aside. You've got to get back to the other works. The other paintings are falling behind. Victor has been asking about the St. Catherine piece. The museum's losing patience. I nodded, though I couldn't shake my growing unease. I'll catch up, I murmured, but even I didn't believe it. I couldn't focus on anything else. The painting, the Baroness had started to call her, had started to become the only thing I could focus on. Even when I tried, I found myself returning to the painting, as if it were calling to me. The woman's eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went. The deeper I investigated her, the more she began to consume my thoughts, my every waking moment. The article had come from a dusty file in the back of the local library, one that had been buried on microfiche and stuffed away in a back room somewhere. I'd had to bribe the front desk worker with a box of donuts and a large coffee, so she'd dig it out for me. But once I'd scrolled through 3 years' worth of articles on local auctions, I finally struck pay dirt. Haunted painting sells at auction. Deadly Baroness's portrait said to haunt Diovina's last known work. the headline read, giving much more detail than any other piece ever had. Though the Baroness was still unnamed, the full article mentioned the painter's dying days. Diovina's obsession with his final portrait left him a shadow of the man he once was. Those who knew him said he would often stand in front of the canvas, seemingly lost to time, as though the woman's eyes spoke to him. In his last weeks, it was rumored he painted over the face of the woman. This had to be the painting, but how had it ended up in our archives? Why had he painted over her face? The deeper I uncovered the painting, the more I believed that the woman, her secrets, were pulling me into a vortex of obsession, just as they had Diovina, Clara. My head jerked up, the soft brush in my hand. The Baroness's eyes were inches from mine, her creamy skin slowly being cleaned at my skillful hands. I blinked and sat back, gazing around the room for the source of my name. But no one was around. The office was strangely empty. I stretched my back, leaning slightly over the chair, and stood up to walk down the hall. Empty. And it was dark. Curious, I walked a few steps towards the archives room. Clara! I whipped around. No one was there, but the voice had come from my office. I rushed back in, but found only the Baroness staring at me. Why were her eyes fixed on me? Her gaze had moved. Her eyes seemed to be fixed on me, just as obsessed with me as I was with her. As I stepped around the stacks of files, my tools, and other paintings I'd neglected in favor of the Baroness, her eyes followed me around the room. I slowly sat down on the stool I'd left in front of her, sitting eye to eye with her. It was only us in the room, no one else. The next day, I gazed around Vincent's office as he sat in front of me. His arms were crossed over his chest, and the furrow in his brow only deepened as he watched me fidgeting. Clara, he said, catching my attention. I glanced up quickly, my eyes locking on his face. I understand that you're passionate about the restoration, but we're running a museum, not a one-woman project. You've been neglecting the other pieces for weeks now. You know how important the St. Catherine piece is. If it isn't ready by the next exhibition, I'll get to it, I said, cutting him off. I blinked rapidly. The St. Catherine piece was complex, but it was just a cleaning job, and since I didn't need to paint anything, I'd be able to finish it quickly. Clara? My eyes widened as the familiar, haunting voice called my name. Do you realize how much time you've spent on this? Vincent paused, his eyes narrowing as he searched for the right words. This obsession. Don't ignore me. I closed my eyes and pressed my fingers to my forehead. I forced myself to meet his gaze. I'll get it done, I just need a little more time. Vincent let out a frustrated sigh, his hands running through his hair. I need you to refocus. We can't afford this. Not with the exhibit coming up. Clara! My head snapped up, but it was just me and Vincent in the room. I glanced down, my heart pounding. His hands were strained, the same rusty red as the Baroness's dress, the splotches covering his fingers and seeping into his nail beds. Clara, Vincent said sternly, though his voice was also tinged with worry. You're letting everything else slip. He flicked through his computer and turned it to me, his stained fingers showing CCTV footage of the archives. And, is that me? I asked, gazing at the screen. Yes. You stood there for an hour like that, Clara. And this is at... His voice trailed off as he checked the timestamp. His face grew increasingly lined with worry. The point is, you haven't been yourself. You look like you haven't slept in days, Clara. This isn't you. Go home. Get some rest, he said, sighing as he adjusted the screen back to normal. I stood, and without hesitating, I left his office. And don't do anything with that painting, he called as I stalked out. But it was calling me. She was calling me. I glanced into the studio from the sliver of a window in the door. Through the frosted glass, I could see a distorted view of the painting sitting on an easel at my workstation. I could see her outline, the delicate slope of her neck, and the blood red of her robes. Suddenly, a shadowy figure moved across the threshold of my door, and I jumped back, startled. I hesitated, struck by fear. Not that someone had broken into my office, but that someone was going to take the Baroness from me. I turned the doorknob, but of course, I'd locked it, and I could see her right there. She was right there. A chill swept through me, and I shivered, closing my eyes as I dropped my hand from the door. When I got home, I was a little shocked to see Ethan on the couch, anxiously texting people. "You're home?" I said, dropping my keys and messenger bag by the door and taking off my coat. He gazed up at me and tilted his head. "You're home," he said worriedly. There was no warmth to his voice, as if he was put out with me. I furrowed my brow. "Yeah, Vincent sent me home early, said I looked tired." "What, early?" "It's 9 p.m., Clara," Ethan said, putting his phone down. I blinked and looked out the window, my stomach clenching. He stood up, moving over to me as he noted the look of confusion on my face. "What's going on, Clara?" he asked quietly. He reached out to rest his hand on the small of my back, but I pulled away, a feeling of overwhelming anxiety rolling through me. "Nothing. I can't." I shook my head and then glanced up at him. "I can't remember what I did." Vincent sent me home at 11? I said, my stomach twisting again. I leaned into the kitchen counter, holding it tightly. Ethan looked shocked, his lips parting to calculate the math. Okay, it's fine. We'll figure it out. You've just been stressed with the exhibition coming up, and all the work, he said, rubbing my back gently. I shook my head, reaching for my bag and rifling through it. My fingers crossed over something gold and metallic. I furrowed my brow and pulled out the ring of archive keys. It jingled in my hand, and I closed my eyes, shaking my head. Why do you... Ethan began, but I cut him off. I must have just shoved them in my bag. It's fine, I said, taking a deep breath. I put the keys gently back into my bag and took out my phone again, checking the time. It's late. I'm late. I came home late. I'm just tired, I said slowly, rationalizing things to myself. Okay, do you want to just call it a night? Get some rest? Maybe a shower? Ethan asked. I saw his nose crinkle from the corner of my eye. Did I stink? My jaw twitched as I bit my cheek. Yeah? I nodded, but couldn't help the feeling that Diavina's barrenness had something to do with the loss of time. I closed my eyes, and Ethan brushed my hair back from my face. Okay, I said, pulling away from him. He looked sad, but didn't move towards me as I stalked off to our bedroom, my phone held loosely in my fist. I stepped into the hallway leading to our bedroom, the light from the kitchen spilling across the dark-toned wood behind me. As I stepped towards the darkened bedroom, I felt a drift, and my head felt heavy. I stopped at the doorway and lifted my head. My fingers paused on the light switch. The room glowed with the dull orange light from the street lamp that streamed through the curtains. It made for an eerie sort of atmosphere. But that's not why I paused. My eyes were locked on the full-length mirror across the room from me. Its glassy surface should reflect only the bed, maybe the edge of my body, not the full shadow that stood ominously facing me. I blinked, frozen in place as I stared at the shadow. It almost pulsated, its shoulders hunched. It wasn't exactly shapeless, but it didn't have any defining features. Still, it felt familiar in a way it shouldn't have been. My fingers twitched, brushing the edge of the light switch. I took a shaky breath. I flipped the switch, and the figure was gone as soon as light flooded the room. The mirror was empty. My chest clenched painfully, and I leaned against the door frame. Slowly, I flicked the light again. There she was, dominating the mirror, a black mass. But I knew her. I knew who she was. I flicked the light on again, and she was gone. But just as quickly, I flicked it off, and she was there. Panic rose like a bile in my throat. Distantly, as if underwater, I could hear Ethan calling to me, but his words were lost. Because the Baroness was calling me, her voice was rising in a screaming ring in my ears. I trembled with fear as I stepped towards the mirror, towards her. My mind fought my body as deep, panicky breaths burst from my chest. As I stepped up to the mirror, the shadow swelled and blossomed, the shrill screams rising to fever pitch in my ears. A hand wrapped around my shoulder just as the mirror shattered. It's with great pleasure that we present the final restored work of Luciano Diovina, the Baroness. Its beauty belies its tragic past, and we are proud to display it as a memorial to our departed co-worker. Vincent held the champagne glass aloft, then took a sip and stepped down from the podium. Beside him, the Baroness had been artfully restored, her colors vibrant, her skin creamy, her robes deep and gory slash of blood red. She looked almost youthful, brought back to life at Clara's skilled hands. It's a shame. An older woman stands next to a younger one, both eyeing the Baroness and the in memoriam plaque that had been hung next to her frame. The younger one nods, glancing nervously at the portrait. It's tragic. But did you hear about what happened with her boyfriend? I mean, the portrait, sure, it's gorgeous, but I heard it was bad. They glance at the painting. Like gruesome. Like she was obsessed? They cut off, clearly unsure how much to say. The older co-worker's voice drops even lower. Obsessed doesn't even cover it. But you didn't hear it from me. It's a horrible end, though. They each sip their champagne, the younger one shivering as if she said too much. The older glances down at her watch. Come on. The presentation. We're late. The seeds of dominion. 1. I always knew the world was constructed on lies. Not minor falsehoods or innocent misunderstandings, but carefully cultivated fabrications designed to shape reality. From my earliest memories, even before my parents disappeared, I sensed that truth was not something freely given. It was deliberately hidden, erased, and rewritten. My parents were among the first to resist. They stood against the Dominion when resistance still felt possible, believing knowledge was a right worth risking everything to protect. They vanished when I was 6, quietly removed by the regime, their identities reduced to whispers and fading memories. Ronan and Elise Marek, old friends of my parents and former resistance fighters themselves, took me in. They taught me how to navigate the unseen currents beneath the surface, how to decode the hidden language of control, the dominion embedded in every broadcast and headline. They showed me the creeping corporate feudalism that had slowly replaced democracy as powerful corporations silently took ownership of entire districts, deciding who prospered and who disappeared. By 16, I was adept at uncovering secrets. I immersed myself in encrypted data streams and forgotten archives. Ronan and Elise warned me. Knowing too much was dangerous, but ignorance was deadly. The Dominion thrived because people feared the truth. They accepted convenience over freedom. My decision to become a journalist was calculated. It allowed me to move unnoticed, to gather information without drawing suspicion. Yet, deep down, I knew this was more than a career. It was a weapon against tyranny. Truth was powerful, but proof was lethal. 2. You ever feel like you're chasing ghosts, Joran? I glanced up from my tablet, where Dominion data feeds ran endlessly, searching for cracks in their carefully constructed narratives. Devin Rains, my closest friend since our academy days, watched me from across the cafe table, worry shadowing his face. We chase ghosts because they're the only thing the Dominion fears, I replied evenly. Devin's discomfort was palpable, a subtle anxiety coloring every gesture. Recently, he'd changed. He'd grown cautious, hesitant. The war's been over for years, Devin said softly. Maybe they won because no one noticed until it was too late. Now, all we're doing is marking ourselves as targets. His words unsettled me, not for their truth, but because they were spoken from fear. Devin's courage had once matched mine, his idealism unwavering. Something had shifted. What's changed, Devin? I leaned forward, lowering my voice instinctively. Surveillance was everywhere, hidden in plain sight. He hesitated, eyes flicking nervously to the security camera mounted near the ceiling. There's a new list, he whispered. It's not for criminals or dissidents. It's for people who question too much. It's called the Inquiry List. I understood immediately. A blacklist was straightforward. Immediate punishment or exile. The Inquiry List was something darker, insidious. It marked you for isolation, slow erosion, and eventual disappearance. You're on it, I stated flatly, watching him closely. He nodded slowly. We both are. A silent understanding passed between us. Devin was frightened, and fear made people dangerous. Still, I wasn't about to stop. Not now, when the stakes had finally become clear. 3. Devin disappeared within days. His presence simply ceased. No messages, no records, no traces. Just silence. I pursued answers with relentless determination, hacking into secured archives, whispering in underground circles, piecing together fragments of his fate. Each revelation deepened my dread. The Dominion Protocol wasn't coming. It had arrived. Our world was now governed by rigid conformity, loyalty, measured in unquestioning obedience. Citizens weren't people. They were assets, evaluated for their utility, discarded when inconvenient. I stared numbly at the evidence on my tablet. Democracy hadn't merely been undermined, it had been methodically dismantled. Devon wasn't dead, not physically. He had been absorbed, transformed into something compliant and controlled. 4. I knew when they would come. Patterns were easy to spot if you paid attention. Increased drone patrols, subtle shifts in daily broadcasts, neighbors becoming suddenly distant. It was all carefully staged. When the knock finally came, I was already on the move. Out through the fire escape, down silent alleyways, navigating shadows with practiced ease. My heart pounded, but my breathing remained steady. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. The train station loomed ahead, my gateway to the industrial underground. Passengers waited silently, their faces blank, eyes fixed firmly forward. I slipped onto the platform just as Dominion enforcers emerged, their armored presence imposing and inevitable. Joran Vale, the voice sent a chill down my spine. Not the enforcer's voice, but Devon's. I turned slowly, dread twisting inside me. Devon stood among them, dressed in Dominion black, his eyes hollow and distant. I recognized the vacancy instantly. The Dominion had taken not only his freedom, but his spirit. "Come quietly," he intoned, emotionless. "You gave in," I accused bitterly. "They made you afraid, and you surrendered." "I adapted," he replied mechanically. "No," I said sharply. "Adaptation isn't compliance." His gaze faltered, something brief and vulnerable flickering behind those empty eyes. Devon reached toward me, an automated reflex of the Dominion's control. The train doors hissed open beside me, a brief window of opportunity. Devon lunged, grabbing my shoulder. Instinct took over. I drove my elbow hard into his ribs, feeling him recoil sharply, gasping for breath. His grip loosened, and I wrenched free, leaping onto the train just as the doors snapped shut behind me. Through the window, Devon stared helplessly, now a shadow fading into the distance. Regret etched his features briefly before the darkness reclaimed him. The train surged forward, carrying me into uncertainty, but also toward freedom. 5. As the city lights blurred into a mosaic of neon and shadow, I steadied my breathing. The train hummed rhythmically beneath my feet, a steady reassurance that, for now, I was still free. Passengers around me stared blankly ahead, eyes purposely unfocused, trained to remain ignorant of anything that might threaten their carefully curated peace. But I was awake. The Dominion thrived on the apathy of the masses, believing control was absolute because compliance was easy. Yet beneath that facade lay a deep-seated fear of truth, a fragile illusion ready to shatter. I had lost Devon, just as I'd lost my parents. Each loss carved itself into my being. Painful reminders that truth always came at a cost. But their sacrifices were not in vain. They'd ignited a flame in me, nurtured by Ronan and Elise. A flame of resistance, a commitment to remember, to speak, and to expose the lies. The Dominion underestimated the strength of those who remembered, those who chose truth over comfort. They believed themselves untouchable, their rule eternal. But power built upon lies was fundamentally unstable, vulnerable to those willing to risk everything for the truth. As the train raced deeper into the industrial outskirts, darkness settled around me, punctuated only by flickering lights and distant shadows. I pressed my forehead gently against the cold window, eyes scanning the landscape rushing past. Factories loomed on the horizon, silent giants standing guard over secrets yet undiscovered. My heart steadied, determination hardening like tempered steel. They might hunt me, silence me, or erase my name from history, but they couldn't erase the truth. Not while people like me still breathed. The Dominion hadn't won, not yet, on a parallel track, unnoticed. Another train moved quietly through the shadows. Inside, illuminated by the pale glow of a screen, a figure stared intently at my image, captured by surveillance cameras. Eyes narrowed thoughtfully, studying every detail of my escape, every gesture, every defiance. From the tinted window of his train car, Devon watched the darkness unfold, shadows reflecting in his eyes. Eyes no longer hollow, but haunted by the flicker of something forgotten. He whispered softly to himself, a truth long buried, but impossible to erase. The truth is not a ghost, it is a weapon. And outside, the city faded slowly into darkness, to the end of the line. When I was a child, I loved trains. Pretty typical little boy enchantment, I think. Wooden tracks and tiny metal wheels, 100 different configurations across my bedroom floor, with the train track pattern carpet. We lived in the countryside, and the trains only ran through the city, so seeing the real thing on a rare outing was like Christmas and birthdays combined. I remember even when I got older that my mother and I would stop at the side of the footpath to watch as they shot over the tracks. I never liked Thomas the Tank Engine, though. The faces creeped me out. I'm mostly neutral about trains now, I think. Adulthood makes you neutral about the things that excited you in childhood, or they encourage you to act like you're neutral about them. I started taking the train daily in my second year of university, and I guess it lost some of its shininess, but I was never as miserable with the journey as some of my fellow commuters. If I had to sit for 40 minutes either way, might as well spend it on a speed-smooth train. watching the landscape shoot by like I'd imagined as a kid. I can't say there's a lot of joy in it today, even if it seems a little fitting in some ways. Beginning and end, you know. A child dreaming of trains, and an adult booking it to the fastest one possible. I still push through to my usual car, the one with the most windows and the best views, opting to look our desecrated landscape in the eyes as we passed over it. The car is emptier than I thought it would be. Are people not flocking to the trains, desperate for a seat, a chance to watch everything flying past? And I settle where I can watch the landscape and the car around me from the same place. I rode to the end of the line once, when I had first moved to the city, and just wanted to quietly indulge that train-loving child still in my chest. I moved from seat to seat as the train emptied, getting the best views and just existing in the feeling. I think I was listening to Imagine Dragons, or something equally fitting for my youth. Just watching everything fly past and trying not to think about grades and professor and facsimiles of friends. All of that stuff had seemed so important back then, like it was the whole world. Today, I'll make that same trip. The end of the line with my eyes on the horizon. No music, though. Today, I'll keep my focus sharp. The car fills slowly and brings with it more commotion than usual. Groups of people talking in frantic pitches and hysterical sobs. Some are dark and grouchy. Those pessimistic, I told you so people. Some are trying to project sunlight through their shaking hands, smiling and saying how much better things will be at the end of the line. All of them are afraid. I am too, but I'm glad to be on the train. The train seems to be faster than usual when it at last sets off. I suppose safety restrictions around speed don't matter anymore. It's still safer than off the train, and there's less to worry about when nothing is coming in the other direction. When we pass the motorway, everything is the same. All the cars heading north, nothing passing the other way. All the lanes filled up to the brim. Those are the people who couldn't leave a thing behind, who filled their seats with books and family heirlooms and nice coats. A nice thought, but none of them will make it to the north. That's what the men across the car are saying, shaking heads to hide their shaking hands. We ride for maybe half an hour before someone spots them. It starts with gasps of horror among friends, pointing and screaming. Then a child crying uncontrollably in one of the further cars. There are packs of them on the highway, stopping the cars and creating barricades to capture as many drivers as possible. A few of the trucks and four-wheel drives manage to push their way off the asphalt and rattle down onto the grass, careening wildly into any direction that is away, for any dwindling possibility of safety. Some of them make it, but even then, that's only for now. We've seen enough now to know that the carnage will only grow. We all know that the North isn't going to be safe for much longer either, but trains are good for running. We can leave it behind for a little while. They don't go after the electric cars, someone pointed out a few weeks into the first attack, drawn to the noise of the gas guzzlers maybe, or the stink of the exhaust. Back then, the attacks were still distant enough that you could brush that off as propaganda from parent to child, a myth to encourage quiet voices and regular bathing. But it went from an unreal kind of warning to a stark reality, with patrols in the streets and locked doors and halting economy. Then the conspiracy theorists reasoned it was government propaganda, some kind of leftist agenda to keep the gas cars off the streets. But then the patrols all got turned, and then nobody really felt safe enough to joke about it anymore. They were saying this city would be the first to go. It looked like something out of a movie from 2014 that teenagers watched religiously, swearing up and down that it wasn't just some dark fiction, but a prediction of the future. This was where we were heading. Kind of ironic, because everyone ignored them, even though the main character of every movie was a teenager being ignored. I guess there were plenty of warnings. We were still all so late to pack up and leave. I guess I felt like it was a weird thing to do alone. Great timing, social anxiety in the midst of the apocalypse. But even now on the train, everyone's in a group. Those teenagers' girls hyperventilating with their Stanley drink bottles by the windows. Those elderly folks joining wrinkled hands and sharing memories they're grateful for in the aisle seats. The grizzled old men trying to pretend they don't care about each other when they'd waited for the others to leave, risked their lives in doing so. They're always in groups in the movies, too, even if only so one of them can get infected and traumatize the rest of them. Maybe I shouldn't have moved so far away. I would at least have my mother then, probably disturbingly nonchalant about the whole deal, as infected numbers grew and showed in increasingly graphic fashion on the evening news. They won't get us, she would be saying, maybe doing some knitting or embroidery or something equally casual. They're still people, I would say. My train sets wouldn't be out anymore, but I'd still have them, tucked into an old wooden chest. Maybe I'd be sitting on it, gravitating to them as I gravitated to everything from childhood. And when it came to the North, when the screams were heard without turning on the TV, I wondered if she'd show fear then, or simply lock the door and light the fire. I probably could have unlocked the door with black in the whites of my eyes, crawling up my veins, sobbing hideous ichor as the infection twisted my brain, begged me to find a new vessel, begged me to become that which I'd been running from. She would be too stubborn to run then. I would tell her that it wanted me to kill, wanted me to submit and drag down whoever I could. And she would offer her chest and her veins and take the pain that way. "It's always been you and me, Bug," she'd say, without a trace of sadness or regret. "Bring me with you. We'll see what comes next." They're coming closer to the train now. Someone is praying in a faltering fashion that suggests they might not have bothered in a long time. The conductor's voice comes over the intercom. "Stay calm. The tracks are clear, and we're making good time." But it doesn't do anything to calm anybody. We're in the frontmost car, so they'll reach us last. But we'll also be the last to see them coming. It would have been nice to travel in a group, but I've never been very good at groups. Nobody ever feels the same as you about everything, which means that everybody sucks at least a little bit. It's still nice to imagine conversation, but the imagined conversation is much more between several variations of myself. The me in early college that's listening to Imagine Dragons, watching the apocalypse, and thinking about those homework due dates that we won't live to see. The child me playing with wooden trains and cheering to pass them in the street, maybe once or twice a year. For a moment, I consider sending a photo to my mother. Consider asking her if she would want to be infected if it was me, or if I should roam with the pack and see her later. We haven't been talking much lately either. She sends me a link to Facebook sometimes, and I send her a picture of the meal I door-dashed sitting in a dirty pan. I don't know how to segue into asking how she wants me to die. There's a fresh wave of screaming and sobbing, twice the finality of anything else. And it takes me a moment to realize it's coming, not from another car, but from the very front, where the conductor sits. I brace myself before the impact, but it's not any use. The train flips over itself. Something left on the tracks, probably, or the metal itself chewed and twisted away. Everyone is screaming, and we all tumble over each other as the car tumbles and glass smashes in all directions. Some people huddle further into the rubble as if they could ever stay hidden. Some pick themselves out, bleeding and shattered, and try to run. I've come to terms with the inevitable. I don't think anyone can run or hide. I think this is it. But I got to have one last ride on my way to the end. Angry Highway by Stephen Scott. Get the hell out of the way. Jerry made sure to honk twice at the fellow in the fast lane. The car moved over slowly. He moved closer to the man's bumper and flashed his headlights. "Come on, stupid jerk." David clutched his armrest, trying to hide his fright. "Jerry, calm down." He sped past the car, glancing over at the elderly man. "What? You siding with that idiot?" He was blocking the passing lane. David hoping to dodge the blunt words of Jerry, countered with a calm voice. "Well, you're almost 15 over the limit." Jerry glared at David sternly. "I'm the professional here." The trainee sighed, revealing his agitation. "Do you want to ride with me or not?" Not liking the hostile tone, David sighed. "I just want to learn the procedures." Jerry set the steering wheel between his legs, reached inside the bag, and pulled out his hamburger. He ate it, then glanced at his newspaper. David somehow hid his panic, reached over, and took hold of the steering wheel. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jerry asked through his bites. "Just helping you out." "I don't need your help. I do this all the time." David released his grip, fought his own irritation at Jerry's tone. David was the new guy and wanted a job, and certainly didn't want to piss off his trainer. He found a neutral subject. "So, how long does the route take you?" "Some days it's longer," Jerry said between chews. "Some days I have to go to Weatherford or Mount Vernon. It depends on what the physicians in those towns need. It's pretty easy. I listen to the radio a lot. Eat when I need to. Take a dump when I need to. Seems like a lonely job." "It can be." He put down the food and paper and braked as he approached a slow truck. The highway reduced to 2 lanes, taking away a safe way pass. "Move it, jerk." It moved to the right slightly, but Jerry could not see around it. The truck slowed. "Move over, dipshit." Jerry pushed on the horn heavily. "I can't see." Although he saw a hill, he decided to go anyway. Pulling completely in the oncoming lane, he revved up the engine. A sports utility vehicle emerged in front of them. He sped up more, determined to get back over in front of the truck. The SUV slightly moved to the right while honking. Jerry accelerated his small pickup. "Shit," David whispered. He clutched the handle above his window as everything in his chest froze into a block of ice. Jerry zipped back to his lane with seconds to spare. Hearing both trucks honk at him, he stuck one hand out the window and extended his finger. "Jerks," he mumbled. David clutched his chest, breathing heavy. "Jerry, you may have been doing this a long time and used to pulling stunts like that. If you want to play with your life, that's fine. But you're also playing with mine." "What? It's their fault? The SUV or the truck should have pulled over or slowed down. There's no shoulder." Their argument was lost in a high-pitched sound. A glint flashed across the rearview mirror. It happened again. The noise and flashes increased, as if gaining on them. The unassuming SUV had donned lights and sirens. The flashing red lights from inside the cab looked angry, and the flashing headlights played a game of gotcha. Jerry cursed and slowly pulled over. The window slid into the door, and Jerry glanced back at the highway patrolman. "License and registration, please." He handed both to the patrolman. "You don't have anything better to do?" The patrolman's head snapped up from examining the documents. "Sir, wait here while I check on something." He rolled the window up to guard from the Texas heat. "I can't believe this guy. I can't believe you," mumbled David. Both sat quiet, letting the air conditioning keep them cool. Eventually, the patrolman returned. "Sir, you've had 2 moving violations in the last 18 months. I'm citing you for reckless driving and improper lane change." "What?" Jerry exclaimed. "I can't believe this crap." "Sir, according to my radar, you were doing more than 20 over the limit. You made a lane change with a solid yellow line and within a quarter mile of a hill. You endangered my life and the life of that trucker." "I ought to throw this ticket away," Jerry said, while shaking it in the patrolman's face. "I'd then have to cite you for littering. Drive safely, sir." Jerry rolled the window back up while putting the ticket in his visor pocket. With the window cracked, he had to get in the last word. "Asshole." He stewed at the patrolman while driving away. As the sun set behind him, it seemed to cool his temper until they reached Fort Worth. Jerry stayed in the passing lane, honking at anyone traveling too slow and making abrupt lane changes. Almost to the office, he sailed through 2 red lights. He stopped when a car in front of him stopped for the traffic signal. As soon as the light turned green, Jerry honked. "Move it, dipshit. It's green." Reaching the office, he took the documents inside and turned them into his boss. He showed David the proper techniques for checking the documents in and checking out for the day. "So that's the life of a courier. What do you think?" David stepped close and stared at Jerry angrily. "I may be new here, but you were downright reckless and unprofessional today. I'm willing to keep this between you and me today. But if I ever hear of you acting like this again, or see it, I'll go straight to the offices about it." Jerry laughed when David turned and walked away. What does he know? I'm a good driver. I'm a professional. It was their fault. Pushing the accelerator hard, Jerry passed the slow driver. "Jerk," he said while honking. Still angry about David's tirade from yesterday, Jerry tried to imagine how he could have handled the situation better. "I should have told him I've been driving courier for 10 years, and he should keep his mouth shut, or I'll shut it for him. Or I could have told him to go to hell. Maybe I should have." His mind snapped to attention when seeing another slow-moving driver. Glancing at his speedometer, Jerry noticed he traveled nearly 90. What is today? Everyone drives slow today? "Asshole," he yelled while passing the car. Hearing a horn, he saw the car in the oncoming lane. Accelerating, he zipped back into his lane with a few seconds to spare. A yawn deflated Jerry's ire. The sun started to drop in the western sky, taking away the gale force winds. For a split second, the beautiful orange glare took away his temper. The highway seemed lonelier today. He actually missed David in the car. Occasionally, He did train a new driver, which was something he enjoyed. His stomach moaned. Jerry sped faster, wanting to get to a restaurant in the next town, then drop off the last bit of pharmaceuticals, then head home. The car seemed relieved as well when the engine stopped. Stretching his back and arms, Jerry tried to awaken his stiff, atrophied muscles. Popping his joints, he looked forward to a nice meal. Sitting at his irate booth, he did not even glance at the menu. The familiar waitress appeared. Somewhere between fit and heavy, she had aged gray eyes that had plenty of wisdom, but mostly from hearing stories. Her wrinkles disappeared in a smile, giving off a pleasant light. It was the typical small-town cafe waitress who had the friendly ear and subtle wisdom. "Hi, Jerry." "The usual?" "Hey, Diane." "Yeah, the usual." "How's the job?" "Boring as ever. Picking up piss, drugs, and lab tests. At least all the idiot drivers make it interesting." She smiled while filling out the ticket. "It'll be out soon, hun." Jerry sighed, dreading the 2-hour drive back to Fort Worth. Damn dipshit drivers. Not all idiots. Jerry looked at the old man who sat in the booth next to him. Was he there before? They all can't be idiots. Grandpa said, if you meet one idiot a day, you met an idiot. If everyone you meet is an idiot, you may be the idiot. He was right, you know. Anger's no good. It leads to prisons and a terrible lot in life. The darkness almost hid the distinguished wrinkles and tired eyes. A red, faded ball cap had "Stands Trucking" stenciled on it. I used to be on the giving end of anger. Now I receive it. Constantly. Perplexed, Jerry wondered why a man whose voice had so much wisdom also dripped with sadness. "It's a lonely life," the man said, "but it's my lot. I'll take it, though I hate it." Jerry hunched his shoulders. "Hate what?" "Ever since..." The man shook his head, unable to finish his sentence. Jerry stood and glanced outside, noticing the large, black truck. "That yours?" asked Jerry. The old man nodded lightly. "Yep, been driving it for years. I hope someday someone can take my place." Jerry stood, wanting to get away from the bizarre old man. He rushed to the bathroom, washed his hands, then returned for dinner. "Good," Jerry mumbled, glad the old man had left. Glancing out the window, the truck was also gone. The waitress finally returned with dinner. "So, Diane, what's with the old coot who was in that booth?" Debbie narrowed her eyelids. "Old man? The one in that booth there," Jerry said, pointing at it. Debbie put her hands on her hips. "I haven't sat anyone in that booth tonight." Jerry looked towards the other booth, wondering if he perceived the sitting arrangement correctly. No. A woman and her child sat there, and he remembered them. He pointed outside. Remember, his cap said "Stands Trucking." Wait a minute, she said disdainfully. The old man with the Stan's trucking ball cap? Jerry nodded, finally taking a bite of his steak. Her voice changed, with a mixture of eeriness and joviality. Ooh, honey, you've seen a ghost. I don't believe in ghosts. Legend has it, a guy named Stan disappeared on this highway about 20 years ago. His truck had this route to Abilene, but truck and driver disappeared. No one ever found him or his truck. Jerry shook his head. No way. The guy was here. Probably a new guy for Stan's trucking. Well, if he was here, said Debbie, he stiffed a check and my tip. And I didn't have to bus the table. Jerry shook his head while finishing his meal. A large semi sped by, spreading the dry Texas dirt behind it, along with the carbon monoxide. Jerry coughed. Wiggling his keys, Jerry unlocked his small pickup and got in. The last delivery. Finally, he could go home. 2 more hours, then a weekend of rest and recreation awaited him. His wheels launched him onto the lonely, dark highway. Darkness spread in front of him, while the sun's light faded behind him. Jerry's eyelids felt heavy. Too much to eat, he thought. He slapped himself and turned on the radio, trying to wake himself. After singing a few bars, he yawned, preventing any distinguishable lyrics. Quickly, he switched it over to a talk radio station, hoping the host might stir some thought to stay awake. No. The eyelids tried to shut. He jerked his head up and opened his eyes wide. As soon as he finished, they tried to shut again. He snapped his head to attention, hoping to stave off sleep. The right side of his truck vibrated heavily, jarring him awake. Quickly, he pulled off the rumble strip and back into the lane. Shaking his head, he remembered a rest stop about 40 miles down the highway. He hoped to make it. His head dropped again. Jerry's eyes blurred. As his vision narrowed, his mind relaxed, anticipating blissful sleep. Almost there, unable to fight it, his eyes closed. A loud honking noise jolted Jerry awake. Cursing, he pulled his head up and cursed loudly. What the? Headlights closed in. Too bright and too close. They almost blinded him. Back off, jerk. Fully awake now, Jerry saw his speed near 85. The vehicle behind him closed the gap. Able to flip the rearview mirror, he sped up, trying to gain some distance. The truck continued to remain close, as if taunting him. I said, Jerry said, while tapping the brakes. Back off. The loud horn almost hurt his ears. It sounded 3 or 4 times. The truck closed the gap again. What the? Jerry said, while flipping off the driver. He hoped the driver of the vehicle could see him. The loud honking started again, jarring Jerry's eardrums. He wanted to cover his ears, but he feared taking both hands off the steering wheel with this maniac behind him. Seeing the small shoulder, Jerry pulled to the right. He ignored the annoying vibrations from the shoulder grooves. "Okay," he said, while slowing down. "Go ahead and get around me." The vehicle also pulled over, maintaining a close distance to Jerry's bumper. "What the?" He glanced ahead, seeing nothing in the oncoming lane. "It's clear, you idiot. Get around me." The horn resounded again, bellowing louder, as if releasing anger or sheer malevolence. Suddenly, an empty feeling tried to drag his chest down. Sensing harm as the driver's intent scared him, an ominous dread filled his chest. Jerry moved to the empty oncoming lane, hoping the driver would pass him. The truck followed every move. In fact, now it seemed as if the vehicle moved to make sure and get its bright lights into the side rear view mirrors. "Damn it," Jerry yelled. "What the hell is your problem?" He moved back to the correct lane, only to be followed again. Defenseless, Jerry felt nervous and outmatched. Whatever vehicle stalked him, he could tell it was at least 2 or 3 feet higher, like an SUV or oversized pickup. The driver pulled alongside Jerry and flashed its lights at him. It honked again, startling him. "You goddamned idiot," he yelled while rolling down his window. "You're gonna kill..." His voice trailed. The dread froze his mind as he recognized the large black truck from the diner. He barely caught the license plate. EVL 666. Jerry might laugh, but he panicked and hit his brakes hard as the truck swerved in front of him, flashed its brake lights for a second, then sped up. The black truck blended with the night. Brake lights revealed its presence again. Jerry veered to the right while hitting his brakes. This time, all tires left the pavement, and his small truck rolled across the plains. Tumbleweeds and tall grass slammed into his grille and thumped the hood. He crashed through a small wooden fence. Scared, he slowed more. A cow appeared in his lights. Veering hard to the right, Jerry barely missed it. Some trees appeared. Panicked, Jerry pushed the brake all the way to the floor. His truck jolted to a stop. Jerry's chest slapped the steering wheel, while papers, pens, and trash all snapped forward. Dust rolled into his cab, trying to choke his throat and invade his eyes. Even though the air conditioner poured cold air on his face, sweat beaded down his forehead and made his palms slick. He quivered, actually fearing for his life. Nearly 200 yards away, the black truck waited on the shoulder. Dust outlined its bright headlights. Jerry stared at the monster, forgetting his fear and forging hatred. Furious, he grabbed his steel flashlight. Clutching it tightly, he imagined pounding the driver's head until it turned into a bloody pulp. "You goddamn jerk," he said, while gaining anger with every step. "Get out of the truck!" The horn sounded, slightly startling him. "I said, get out of the truck," he said, while hitting the hood with his flashlight. The horn wailed again. "I said," Jerry said, reaching for the door. "Get out of..." The door opened. Fiery eyes leapt at Jerry. The mouth, lined with disfigured, randomly sharpened teeth, howled loudly. Cold, shadowy arms extended and tried to grab him. Jerry slammed the door and fell backwards. Panicked, he jumped up and rushed back to his truck. The shrill horn sounded again, leaving behind a cold, dreaded fright. In a full run, he got back to his car, slammed the door shut, and rolled up the window. "You can't get away from him." Jerry shined the light at the old man. "What the? Who are you? What's going on?" The old man looked as if he was about to cry. "I'm sorry, but he's letting me go, and he needs a new driver." "Get the hell out!" Jerry screamed, while trying to push the old man out of the truck. More confused than scared, Jerry stopped trying to extract the man. "What are you talking about? I thought you were..." An invisible vice clamped on Jerry's neck. Feeling like cold steel, the touch robbed the warmth in his body. In his rear-view mirror, he saw it. The monster's disfigured face looked as if it had been burned. Its eyes alternated between a hollow, black color and a fiery red anger. Its large mouth stretched wide, emanating a deadly hiss. "So long, young fellow. You'll learn, just as I did." Jerry tried to reach for the old man's help. Ignored, he struggled against the powerful, cold grip. It clamped tighter. Soon, everything blurred, then went dark. David stared at the long, forgotten highway while yawning. The road stretched endlessly, fading into a blur in the far distance. Soon, the sun started to recede behind him, trying to blind him in the mirrors. The empty miles obstructed his journey back to Fort Worth. David wondered what happened to Jerry. He was last seen at a cafe several miles back. Then he disappeared. The highway patrol could not find him, nor his truck. David snapped awake as he approached a black pickup truck. It traveled too slow. Needing to get around it, David moved to the left. Unable to see very well, David lightly tapped his horn. The truck moved to the right. Then he zipped around it. "Move it, dummy!" Jerry stared into the distance as the small pickup got around him. Tired, he wanted to sleep. Depressed, he wanted to cry. Hungry, he longed for food. His passenger, though, enjoyed making him listen to everyone who passed him. "Jerk! Idiot! You damn fool! Get the hell out of the way!" Every insult echoed perfectly in Jerry's ears. The death of the artist. People file, though, galleries like they're waiting in the queue at the pharmacy. "Ooh," I hear someone say. "I like that one," pointing at a depiction of the artist being ripped to shreds in the war-torn jungles of Vietnam, like it's a new type of corn plaster she's thinking of taking for a spin. Most people move at a bureaucratic pace, past each frame. Tick, tick, tick. It makes sense if you want to see as much as you can. As the factoid goes, if you looked at each painting in the Louvre for just 30 seconds, it would take over 8 days to see them all. Nobody has that much time. I sit at the other end of the spectrum. I want to find artwork I'm entranced by. And when I do, I offer myself up for captivity. Captivate me, I say, as I look at it loudly close up and quietly from a distance. I look at it in and out of focus. I close my eyes to try and recreate it in my mind. Then I look again. I look at the little corners that the artist probably thought nobody would focus on, or at that figure in the background, doing an impression of being incidental. I sit at bench 42 in the Turner Contemporary, Margate. The painting I'm looking at has been in the gallery's permanent collection for 1183 days, and I've been here for most of them. Not in this spot the whole time. I'm not a lunatic. I do know the security guards by name, though, and they me. Trev, Stu, and Gaz have all added me on Instagram. Gaz has a great side hustle in bespoke, oversized macrame pieces. The gallery is on my way to and from work, and my twice daily visits to this painting have been a helpful pause, an inhale, exhale, as I take my own bureaucratic steps. So I feel like I've put in enough hours to generalize a little bit about gallery goers. The painting I sit in front of is called The Success of Icarus. It's a trans avant-garde painting. That is to say, it's bold and expressive. It tells its story with drama. Icarus doesn't fall. He rises. His arms stretch out to the sun. He is enveloped in white light, and his feathers begin to fall away. But his face is ecstatic. I've always thought he looks like someone at the top of a roller coaster, eyes wide with exhilaration, anticipation, and fear. The sea lies below him, painted in pale, insignificant colors, the waves soft and cushioning. It's 36 by 48 inches, oil on canvas, and an absolute smash hit. I'm not quite telling the truth. It's not trans avant-garde. It's actually a response to the trans avant-garde movement. But now, we're really counting brushstrokes. It doesn't matter. The only place it ever mattered was during my PhD. One gallery goer reads the accompanying text for longer than he looks at the painting. I know it off by heart. The Success of Icarus, Hilary Vale, 1981. Oil on canvas. Vale reimagines the myth of Icarus, portraying him not as a tragic figure, but as a symbol of elation and freedom. With vibrant colors and dynamic energy, this celebratory painting challenges our shared narratives, focusing on flight rather than fall. The artist requested multiple revisions of this piece, leading to legal action by the gallery before the final version was completed in 1988. I check my phone. 8:46, already 1 minute late. I stand up to go. "Cheerio, Nate," says Trev. "Bye," I say, and stop. I step closer to Icarus, narrowing my eyes. "Is that—" I lean in. Maybe it's because I've been thinking about all the changes Vale made. But I swear, there's something different about it. Next to Icarus's mouth, where the feathers are beginning to scatter amongst the confusion of barbs, there's an unfamiliar shape. It looks a little bit like a teacup. I immediately dive down into the reservoir of Vale knowledge within me, but come up disappointed. I thought I knew every brush stroke, but Vale can still surprise me. I keep thinking about the teacup all the way to work, thinking loudly up close and quietly from a distance. It puzzles me. When I left my PhD, I had 2 criteria in my job search. It should offer me enough spare change for the 1 kilo tubs of kimchi, and it should be at least 99% conflict-free. I appreciate that there will always be some disagreements about the correct biscuit to have in the office, which I allowed 1%. I became a finance administrator at the Arts Center. Processing invoices, I thought, would be safe territory. Unfortunately, the artists who work for us don't care about submitting neat and accurate expense claims. And the people who owe us money don't really want to pay up. It's been 3 years. I still haven't really had the heart to make them. So now, I'm failing art itself. I'm on my lunch break when I see it. There, on the top shelf of the cupboard, with the plastic champagne flutes, pumpkin carving kit, and a mug shaped like Dolly's head, is the teacup. My hand shakes as I gently lift it down, cupping it in my palms like a baby chick. It is very delicate looking, with a slightly worn gold rim. The only remarkable thing about it is a distinct blue tinge inside. Again, I search for some sense of recognition, but find nothing. I wrap it in my jumper, then in my bag, out of the way. All afternoon, I'm tempted to Google Hillary Vale blue teacup, but don't. Partly because I want the satisfaction of decrypting the enigma, and partly because I'm worried I'll stray into territory NSFW. When did I discover Vale? I was 14, an age where I loved things absolutely, before caution and caveats got in the way. We were studying a painting by Theodore Redgrave, a friend and artistic contemporary of Vale. Burned bright, died young by suicide. Small oeuvre, huge potential, all lost. My teacher couldn't miss me having a screechingly obvious, pivotal moment in his second period Tuesday art class. "If you like this, check out Hilary Vale. There's a lot more to get into," he said, in the same voice he'd use to suggest that I might want to put the lids back on the pens. I did a quick search for Vale's work when I got home. I stayed up all night looking at it. I loved it. Loved the look of it. Loved his insistence on choosing the vibrant. Already at 14, the world's narratives felt familiarly miserable. Vale said, "Fuck that." Vale made me feel more me. I loved the last laugh, in which rainbow confetti erupts from the mouths of diners, laughing in the face of death. I loved Gutterfolk, a mid-'80s depiction of nurses providing hands-on care to an AIDS patient. I loved The Divine Mess, a vivid celebration of celestial chaos. I loved Hercules in Lace, in which the hero, draped in soft pink material, holds a club in one arm and cradles a baby in the other. I loved Sebastian, in which the saint looks too bored with his suffering to feel it. And of course, I loved the success of Icarus. That night, my heart pumping neon red blood through my body, I'd looked up Vale himself. Still alive. Not just that, contactable. I wrote him an email to say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." When I arrive home from work, I put the teacup on the top shelf of my own cupboard. It is hardly in danger from my part cat, part cushion icky, but it feels right to try and keep it safe. "All right, Gaz. Afternoon, Nate. Been at the macrame again then?" I wave my phone. Can't not do it. He winks and chuckles, not finding that joke any less funny than the first time he told it. I am just about to tell Gaz I've been meaning to put in a good word for him in the cafe exhibition space at the art center, when I look at Icarus and see it has changed again. Do you see that? I point next to where the teacup was. What? It looks like a bottle, a tiny bottle, pouring. See it? Gaz wrinkles his nose. Nah, can't see it, Nate. You must have looked at this guy one too many times. He makes the sign for crazy. But then again, he says, what do I know? I'm not the art doctor, eh? He slaps me on the back. I pause, my gaze suddenly completely stuck. Well, neither am I. Am I? Close enough, mate. I shake myself out of it. Make myself look him in the eye. Smile. I must remember to speak to Maggie about the cafe space. On the walk home, Gaz's comments pull me back to that moment, that room, 3 or so years ago. There's a certain shade of disdain which I've only seen from professors. Somewhere along the road to seniority, they all master it. Maybe they teach it at the graduation ceremony. Wouldn't know. Professor Sophie Simons, preeminent trans avant-garde expert with a specialism in Hilary Vale, had printed off my thesis so far. She had not sent me the notes ahead of my supervision. I'd been waiting 2 months since our last meeting. This copy had creased pages, coffee, and wine, stains. and as she passed it over, she said, "Sorry, it appears some pages are out of order." I flicked through the first few pages, which had been scrawled on in various hands. "What's going on?" We sat opposite each other in her poky, umbrous office. It was a room in which I felt a veil expert should have refused to teach. She perched on the edge of her chair, hands clasped. I felt, last supervision, that our conversation was unproductive. Her expression was concerned. Yes, we argued. A spirited discussion about the Red Grave matter. Any more than that, and I would have referred the matter to the faculty. She raised an eyebrow. "Please bear that in mind," she continued. "In our world, debate is par for the course. Pardon the pun, if you will. We must all stand up to critical vigor. But there is a point at which that becomes inappropriate. Please, I can't take another attack. You must hear me, Nathaniel, when I tell you that you have reached and passed that limit." Her voice became sharp. "I can't tell you how many times I have attempted to dissuade you from your theory that Icarus was painted by a dead man. I think he's a collaborator, obviously not after he died," I said, already exasperated. "Please refrain from interrupting me. I don't wish to argue with you." Her tone softened. "I do ask that you hear me. Otherwise, we won't have time for you to complete your studies. We'll have to consider deferral, or worse." She smoothed down her skirt and clasped her hands again. "I really do want you to consider this, as I'm sure you could be a stellar presence in the trans-avant-garde academic community. I've taken the time to ask my most eminent colleagues to read your draft. You will find some intellectual truths here from those who should matter if you want to pursue a future as a Vale scholar. Icarus is not a lost Redgrave. It is a tribute to him. This is a crossroads. There's still time to take another path. I've contacted Vale. I know he'll get back to me soon. The artist is not the canonical interpreter of their work. You know this. It doesn't matter either way. It's futile." She held her head in her hands and addressed him as though he were a 5-year-old who'd used her acrylics to paint the radiator. "The work speaks for itself, Nathaniel. I knew as I walked out that it would be the last time we'd speak. At least as professor and student. Even if I picked some other central argument. With this thesis trick, she'd done a bang-up job of preemptively raising my reputation. I'd expected the worst. But even this didn't prepare me for the ambush when I read the notes. Inchoate notion of Vale's context. Gutterfolk is 1987, not 1986. Fundamental misapprehension of Vale and Redgrave's styles. Absolutely, Stephen. Couldn't agree more. You must abandon this notion. And one which simply said, "Ha! I'm so deep in memory, I nearly miss the small bottle. It's peeking out from a pile of discarded food packets by my bins. It's made of thick blue glass with a floral pattern. I have a battle with the cork stopper, but eventually I'm victorious. The inside smells of bitter almonds. I quickly replace it. I know very well what Redgrave drank to kill himself. What I don't know is why it's in my possession. I walk home quickly and put it on the shelf next to the teacup. Vale wouldn't have spent time on grim thoughts. So after Professor Simons and I uncoupled, I tried my best not to ruminate. I hadn't won over the establishment, and the artist had not validated my theory. But no one died, just my ambitions, and the plan for the rest of my life. As I look at Icarus this evening, I get as close up as I'm allowed. I trace my finger in the air over the brush strokes of the impossibly textured sea, a palimpsest. I look at the eyes, which bear a hint more definition than Vale's usual style. They look wider, more fear than exhilaration in them today. As I scan the sky, I see them all. The teacup, the bottle, and holding the bottle, a hand, not Icarus's. I think about my solitary park walk home and bite my nails. "Oh, right, Nate," I hear Security Stu call. "Heard you got Gaz his first exhibition." Maggie had loved the idea of macrame. Apparently, cord is in. He shakes my hand vigorously. "Good lad. About time Gaz got some recognition for his strings." "No problem," I say. "Evening, Stu." I glance at Icarus one last time before leaving. I can't help but see the hand. The little finger sticks out. Jaunty. Camp. I wonder if I'll make it home. I'm really glad I put the bottle of cyanide where Icky can't get it. I'm close to the park when my phone begins to ring. It says unknown number, but I know who's calling. I answer. "Hillary Vale?" That's right. Hearing such a familiar voice addressing me feels like seeing the eyes of Icarus turn, slowly seeking to fix directly on mine. "You emailed me a long time ago. Sorry it's taken me so long to reply." "You really don't have to," I say. He laughs, and even though now I know what I know, I still feel a rush, an aurora surge within me. "I sent you some emails more recently. I could have done with a reply to them, too." I pause. Regrave painted Icarus, didn't he? It takes a while for Vale to reply. He was more of a collaborator. But yes, we made it together. I'm back in the office. I'm telling Professor Simons. I imagine her face, those clasped hands, gripping on to the last moments of her illustrious reputation. I've still got the thesis covered in vicious marginalia. I could publish it. Watch as they all turn on each other. Until I realize they won't believe you, he says. I imagine myself actually trying to explain the situation and realize that I have no evidence. I am only Mr. Nate Crow, an embittered conspiracy theorist, trying to tarnish the memory of a living legend. Why do you think I've revealed this to you? Keep the trinkets. The police won't want them. I can hear him smiling. You murdered your friend, I say. Why? To live, Nate, he says. I had no choice. Think of my life with him still around. He was always the better artist. It was a fine margin. But there it was. Every award, every exhibition opportunity. He was there around every corner, winning it all. I always thought I could achieve more, do better, outrun him like Atalanta, until he painted Icarus. When I saw it, how remarkable he had made my vision. That's when I knew I'd never be legendary with him around. I was great, but he was greater. And so, his voice became a forced rasp. I needed to be the sun. Why tell me at all? I ask. Nate, it's been 40 years. You've seen from my art how I've struggled to avoid these encroaching shadows, with no way to unburden myself. But now I have you, and you finally have me. He ends the call. In my mind's eye, I see the last laugh, in which rainbow confetti erupts from the mouths of diners, laughing in the face of the figure of death who remains there, temporarily obscured. I see gutter folk, a mid-80s depiction of nurses providing hands-on care to an AIDS patient. And it suddenly feels like performative empathy. I see the divine mess, a vivid celebration of celestial chaos, where noise drowns out the clarity of truth. I see Hercules in lace, in which the hero, draped in soft pink material, holds a club in one arm, slightly behind him, and which you may not notice, given the baby cradled in the other. I see Sebastian, in which the saint looks bored of his tiresome, endless suffering. I see Icarus's terror when I find artwork I'm entranced by. I offer myself up for captivity. I look at it loudly, close up, and quietly from a distance. I look at it in and out of focus. And there, that's me, in the corner of that park scene, doing an impression of being incidental. The unwritten pages. 37 minutes after getting off the Route 19 bus, Bronwyn Miller realized her mistake. The familiar weight against her hip had disappeared because her leather-bound diary, which was her 3-year companion, wasn't there. Her fingers instinctively searched for the familiar worn cover, but discovered just the empty pocket of her oversized cardigan. She abruptly paused on the sidewalk while whispering, "No, no, no," mentally retracing her steps. The last places she visited before reaching the current sidewalk included the coffee shop and the bus stop, followed by the bus ride. She remembered having her diary at the bus stop with her, where she wrote during every wait because it had become her routine. The diary wasn't just any journal. The diary held all her unfiltered thoughts and secrets for 3 years, which she never expressed out loud. This was Bronwyn in her true form, without her deliberate public image. She started running back toward the bus stop, which was 6 blocks away. How likely was it for her diary to remain undisturbed on that bench in a city of 4 million? 0, as it turned out. An elderly woman sat on the bench and fed pigeons, while no leather-bound book appeared in sight. She knew that it was gone and felt a strange emptiness inside. Bronwyn reached the point of thinking the situation wasn't as terrible after 3 days passed. Someone had probably thrown it away. Bronwyn confirmed the transit authority had no records of anyone turning in her diary. Then came the notification. Bronwyn received a phone notification while she was working. A new email with the subject line, "I think this belongs to you?" A link represented the entire email, which lacked any other content. Upon clicking on the link, a basic blog titled "Pages Found" appeared on the web page, showing its first post created earlier that morning. Sometimes I wonder if anyone would notice if I disappeared. Mom would, obviously, but would she be sad or just inconvenienced? She spent so many years being disappointed in me that maybe it would be a relief. I think about disappearing a lot lately. Not dying, just vanishing. Starting over somewhere. No one knows the Bronwyn who always messes up. Her heart stopped. She'd written those words just last week, following her argument with her mother. The words matched exactly with her diary entries, which she had written by hand. As she scrolled through the page, she discovered 3 new entries, which contained her personal reflections written during the past month. The content hasn't reached extreme damage yet, but it's personal enough to make her feel exposed. At the bottom of the page was a comment box, and above it, a message. Bronwyn, if you're reading this, comment here. We need to talk about what you wrote on your remaining pages. She didn't sleep that night. She kept refreshing the blog compulsively while watching another entry show up. I had that dream again, where I'm giving my presentation and realize I'm completely naked. Dr. Winters says it's about vulnerability, about my fear of being exposed. How ironic is that? I pay someone $200 an hour to tell me I'm afraid of people seeing who I really am. Maybe she's right, though. I've spent so much energy crafting this competent, put-together version of myself. What would happen if people saw the real mess underneath? After hours of intense deliberation, Bronwyn typed the words, "This is private. Please stop posting my words. What do you want?" The response came within minutes. "Meet me tomorrow, 3 p.m. the bus stop where you left it." Bronwyn arrived at 2:45, her hands shaking. Before going to the meeting, she instructed Martha about her location and insisted that Martha call the authorities if she failed to report back by 3:30. At exactly 3 o'clock, her phone buzzed with another link. "I see you, Bronwyn. I've been watching you for a while now, even before I found your diary. You take this bus every Tuesday and Thursday. Look to your left, at the cafe across the street." Through the cafe window, she could see a figure holding up what appeared to be her diary. Her heart raced. as she stood at the curb, until a gap in the traffic opened for her to cross. Bronwyn identified the figure sitting at the window table as she walked closer. "Eliza," she said in disbelief. Bronwyn's quiet marketing co-worker, Eliza Chen, sat down reading Bronwyn's diary. "Why?" was all Bronwyn could manage. Eliza pushed the diary toward her. "I found it. I opened it to find out whose it was. And once I realized it was yours, I should have just returned it. But then I read a bit more." She paused. "You wrote about feeling invisible, about no one really seeing you. So you tracked me down to publish my personal feelings on the internet?" Bronwyn hissed. Her face flushed as she confessed that she knew what she did was wrong. "But I recognized myself in your words. That feeling of being invisible, together with the necessity to hide behind a facade. My intention was to demonstrate that someone truly saw you and listened to what you said." "You thought what? That I'd be grateful?" Bronwyn snatched up her diary and held it close against her body. Eliza didn't know what thoughts she had and looked down. "I've taken the blog down. All the posts are deleted. Your words made me feel connected to you. My whole life, I've felt as though no one would even realize I was gone." "What you did was a violation," Bronwyn stated firmly. "You had no right." "I know. I'm sorry." Eliza spoke once more when Bronwyn began to walk away. "There's something else you should know. On page 43, you stated that you haven't encountered anyone who truly understood your feelings. That's not true, Bronwyn. You're not alone. That doesn't make what you did okay." "I know," Eliza said quietly. Bronwyn opened her diary to a blank page and started to write as she walked towards the bus stop. "Today, I encountered the person who discovered my diary. I discovered that it was Eliza from work who found my diary, rather than a creepy stranger. Eliza expressed her connection with me through the words I wrote. I remain angry, yet feel uneasy about how someone who barely existed to me understood me so well. Eliza mentioned my writing. You possess exceptional writing skills, she remarked. This memory took me back to my creative writing professor during my sophomore year, before I changed my major to business, because my father considered business more practical. These pages represent the sole place where I've openly revealed my desire to write a novel. A week later, Bronwyn found a sealed envelope on her desk with a handwritten note. I understand if you decide never to speak to me again. If you ever do, I must inform you that I have begun writing too. Putting the invisible parts on paper sometimes helps people understand them better. E. That evening, she flipped to page 43 of her diary. I question whether there exists another person who experiences this same sensation of ghosting through their own existence. At times, I feel I could yell in a packed space without anyone listening to me. On Monday, Bronwyn took her usual bus Eliza occupied the back seat as she wrote notes into her little notebook. Their eyes met briefly before Eliza quickly looked down. Bronwyn took the vacant seat next to Eliza. "I got your note. I was sincere when I apologized," Eliza answered, with a voice so faint it was nearly inaudible. "What are you writing?" Bronwyn asked. "Just thoughts. Nothing as eloquent as your words. Your words reveal things that otherwise stay hidden," Eliza resumed. "Reading your diary felt as though someone had expressed my inner emotions in words." Bronwyn acknowledged that her actions were still wrong, while showing less anger. "I know. After discovering your diary, I started writing my thoughts down myself. The act of writing my thoughts down became helpful after I read your January entry. Writing feels like breathing underwater because you discover air in an environment meant to choke you. Yes, your diary entries reminded me of your desire to write a novel one day. This story is about all the characters you've been imagining since childhood." Bronwyn felt her face flush. Those were private dreams she'd almost forgotten. Eliza said softly, "You know that you can do it. Your diary entries read like literature already." The bus came to a halt at its regular destination for Bronwyn. She decided to remain seated instead of exiting as the bus started moving. 6 months later, Bronwyn sat across from Eliza at their regular cafe table by the window, the same table where they'd had their confrontation. Bronwyn declared, "I finished it," while pushing the manuscript toward Eliza across the table. "All thanks to you." Eliza picked up the stack of papers, reading the title page. "The Unwritten Pages" by Bronwyn Miller. Their initial coffee meetings, which started cautiously, developed into both a genuine friendship and a creative partnership. They gathered every Tuesday evening to write, with Bronwyn working on her novel while Eliza focused on poetry. Bronwyn announced, after taking a sip of her coffee, that she planned to send her manuscript to the literary agent they met at the writer's workshop. Eliza remarked on the strange way things come together. "The moment that brought us together happened because you left your diary on the bus stop." Bronwyn joined in with a playful grin, saying, "You were such a creepy stalker. I prefer to think of myself as the universe's extremely flawed messenger." Eliza's expression grew serious. "What drove me to give you back your diary was something you'd written about your dream to write a novel, but your fear that no one would want to hear your voice. Your diary entry revealed your dream of becoming an author, yet your fear held you back. I came to understand that I was reading the thoughts of an individual who possessed valuable insights, but doubted anyone would listen to them." That night, Bronwyn opened her original diary and flipped to the last page where she started writing a new entry following her confrontation with Eliza. She went back to read her thoughts from 6 months prior. "I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive her, but today I understood something. The experience of being truly seen can evoke simultaneous feelings of fear and awe." Beneath those words, Bronwyn added, "Today I finished my novel. Sometimes, the worst moments in our lives become doorways to the best ones. Sometimes, a stranger becomes the friend who helps you find your voice. And sometimes, being seen is exactly what you needed all along. She shut the diary softly because she was no longer fearful of its contents or the consequences of someone reading them. The words had served their purpose. They had guided her home to herself. The hunger, it happened overnight. One evening, the whole world was bathed in the rich hues of a setting sun. The sky painted in oranges and purples. The next morning, everything had turned gray. Not just dull or faded, color itself was gone. The trees, flowers, ocean, even people's skin and eyes had become mere variations of black, white, and gray. It was if reality had been drained, leaving behind a lifeless, monochrome wasteland. At first, scientists tried to explain it as some anomaly in human vision, a mass hallucination, an unknown pollutant in the air. But when they dissected plants and animals, their tissues were colorless at a molecular level. Screens, paintings, dyes. Nothing could produce a single shade beyond the grayscale spectrum. Then, people started disappearing. It wasn't like normal vanishing. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away. One moment, someone was there, and the next, gone, like they had been erased from existence. The only thing left behind was a faint, smudged shadow on the ground, as though they had begun to dissolve before vanishing entirely. Escher had been watching it happen for weeks. He kept a notebook where he marked every missing person in his town, tracking patterns, trying to make sense of it all. At first, the patterns were unclear, just a slow trickle of missing people. The painters, the poets, the dreamers, those who had dared to whisper about color, to grieve its absence, were the first to go. Then, it was the children who still dreamed in color, their small voices describing the impossible. A sky that wasn't gray, a sun that burned gold. Each one disappeared without a sound, leaving behind nothing but that eerie, smudged shadow. Now, Escher could feel it watching him, lingering just at the edge of his vision, a weight in the air that pressed against his skull, cold fingers at the nape of his neck. The more he thought about color, the stronger it became, like a slow, suffocating whisper wrapping around his mind. He had a theory, but it curdled in his stomach like rot. What if whatever took the color away was still here? And what if it didn't want anyone to remember what had been lost? Escher kept his theory to himself. He had seen too many people vanish after speaking too freely. But in the quiet of his apartment, under a single flickering bulb. He scrawled his thoughts into his notebook, pressing the pencil so hard against the paper that the tip snapped. That night, sleep came in restless waves. Dreams of golden sunrise, of green forests and sapphire oceans flickered behind his closed eyelids. Something else lurked there too, a whispering void pressing at the edges of his vision, a presence that noticed him. He woke with a start, heart pounding. The bulb above him flickered more erratically now, casting sharp, jumping shadows across the walls. Then he saw it, a smudge, one of those gray stains on the floor near his desk. It hadn't been there before. It looked like the others, the ones left behind by the vanished. But he was still here. Escher reached out a shaking hand, brushing his fingers over the smudge. Ice shot up his arm. His breath hitched, his vision wavered, and for a split second, he saw something, a figure, a shifting mass of darkness standing in the corner of his room, featureless, faceless, but watching him, waiting. The moment passed, and he yanked his hand away. The thing was gone, but he knew it had been real. He flipped open his notebook with trembling fingers. If he was right, he had limited time before it came for him. He needed answers. Somewhere out there, someone knew the truth. Someone who was still alive. Escher didn't sleep again that night. He sat at his desk, staring at the smudge on his floor, waiting for it to move. It didn't, but something else did. A creak in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, his breath hitched. He lived alone. The sound came again, closer this time. A dragging shuffle, like bare feet sliding across wooden floors. Escher reached for the nearest object, a rusted letter opener. Pathetic, but it was something. He moved toward the door, silent, his pulse slamming against his ribs. He pressed his ear against the wood. Nothing. Then a whisper. Not words, just a sound. Something wrong. Like wind whistling through hollow bones. Escher yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, but the walls weren't. Long, uneven handprints streaked the wallpaper, dragging downward, as if something had clawed its way along. The air was thick, pressing, like he had stepped into a vacuum where sound and light had begun to fold in on themselves. Then he noticed the door at the end of the hall. Apartment 203. No one had lived there for months, but now it was open. A sliver of darkness yawned beyond the threshold, impossibly black, deeper than shadow. Something was inside, watching, waiting. Fingers slowly emerged from the darkness, wrapping around the edge of the door, not quite human. Too long, too thin, curling around the edge of the door. The skin wasn't just gray. It was wrong, shifting like static, like it wasn't fully real. The fingers twitched. Escher bolted. He didn't stop until he was outside, breath steaming in the cold air. The city was dead silent, buildings looming in their gray-scale monotony. But something had changed. The streetlights flickered, and for the first time since the color vanished, Escher saw something new. In the distance, above the rooftops, high in the night sky, a single, pulsing red light, the first color he had seen in weeks. And deep in his gut, Escher knew it was calling to him. He had two choices: run the other way and pretend he never saw the red light, or go to it. Every survival instinct screamed for the first option, but something deep inside, something primal, pulled him toward the second. It was the first color in a world that had been stripped bare. It was wrong, unnatural, but it was something. His feet were already moving. The city was eerily empty. Cars abandoned at intersections, their windshields coated in dust. Storefronts remained open, shelves half-stocked, as if people had simply walked away from their lives. The red light pulsed, steady and slow, coming from the tallest building in the city, the old communications tower. As Escher approached, he felt it before he heard it. A deep, low hum, subsonic, just beneath the range of hearing, but strong enough to feel in his bones. The street lights flickered in time with it. A shadow moved up ahead. Escher froze. A figure stood in the middle of the street, facing away. Motionless, the man, or what had been a man, wore a tattered suit, its fabric faded to gray like everything else. Something was wrong with him. His arms hung too long at his sides, limp and lifeless. His head titled slightly, as if listening to something Escher couldn't hear. And then, slowly, the man's neck snapped back, bending at an impossible angle. His face. Escher sucked in a deep breath. The man's eyes were gone. Just smooth, gray skin where they should have been. His mouth hung open in a silent, gaping O, like something had hollowed him out from the inside. And then, without moving his lips, a whisper slid from his throat. "You shouldn't see the color." Escher ran. His breath came in short, sharp gasps, feet pounding the pavement. The communications tower loomed ahead. The hum grew louder. The street lights died. Darkness swallowed everything except for the red glow above, pulsing faster now, more urgent. Something was chasing him. He could hear it, a skittering, impossibly fast, limbs scraping against the pavement. The tower doors were open. Escher threw himself inside and slammed them shut. Silence. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He took a shaky breath, turning to face the interior. The building was empty. An old stairwell wound up in the dark, leading to the roof. The red glow pulsed from above. There was a voice. Not from behind the door, not the stairwell, but from inside the room. A whisper, slithering through the air like a breath against his ear. You were not supposed to remember, Escher finally realized. The red light hadn't been calling him. It had been warning him. He turned slowly, his breath shallow. The room was empty, but the whisper had been right next to him. The red light pulsed above, faster now. Urgent. He forced himself forward, gripping the stairwell railing. He had to reach the top. He had to see whatever was waiting for him. The climb was endless. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls. His vision swam, his skin prickling, like something unseen was brushing against him. The climb ended at a door, rusty, slightly ajar. Beyond it, the red glow bled into the darkness. Escher pushed it open. He walked out onto the roof. The city stretched out below, dad and colorless. At the center of it all, perched on the tower's antenna, like a grotesque, broken thing, whatever it was not a machine. It was alive, a shifting, writhing mass, its surface pulsing with sickly veins of red light. It had no defined shape, no eyes or mouth, just an undulating, wet mass of twisting tendrils, each one ending in something horrifying. Faces, not full heads, just faces, half-formed, stretched, and distorting, mouths open in silent screams. They flickered in and out of existence, as if trapped. Escher knew, deep in his bones, these were the ones who had vanished. Not erased, not destroyed, absorbed. His stomach twisted, and his knees nearly gave out. The red light flared, and suddenly he remembered. The color hadn't been taken. It had been consumed, and the thing was still hungry. A shadow loomed from behind him. Escher turned just in time to see the eyeless man from the street standing in the doorway. But he was different now. His face was melting, the edges smearing like wet charcoal, his features slipping away. The man took a step forward, then another, and with each step, his body blurred, losing detail, like he was being erased in real time. "Join us," the voices whispered. Escher staggered back. The fleshy mass of faces quivered, responding to the movement, its tendrils stretching toward him. The eyeless man, if he even was a man anymore, took another step forward. his form blurred, warping like wet ink, his face melting away completely. Escher tried to run, but something grabbed his ankle. Ice shot up his leg as a tendril snaked up his calf. It wasn't solid, not exactly. It was like touching static, buzzing, shifting, eating away at him the moment it made contact. A dark gray substance was oozing out of his skin like ink in water. He kicked, thrashed, clawed at the rooftop, but it was pulling him in. More tendrils lashed out, latching onto his arm, his torso, his face, cold, deep, endless. His vision swam. Shadows moved at the edges of his sight. His skin tingled as something deeper than pain rippled through him, like he was being unraveled. The voices rose in a distorted, guttural chorus. "Join us," Escher gasped. And for the briefest moment, he saw everything. Not just the city, not just the rooftop. Beyond, the world before color disappeared, and the thing that had come before that, something vast, endless, watching, waiting. That fleshy thing of faces wasn't the beginning. It was only a fragment of something much worse. The red light pulsed one final time. Then it went out. Silence. Darkness. A whisper rippling through the void. Now we are free. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.